Hey, what's going on, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies.
The tickets for people who are in the industry and going through the insolvency are free. That's great. That's great.
If you're going to succeed in this space, you have to do it lean and mean.
Ripping around in a $2,000 car with a $6,000 stereo and living large when I was 18 years old.
We'd definitely like to hear more from bud tenders, and we'd like to feature some bud tenders on the show.
Hey, welcome to Legacies, everyone. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie, sick, joined by Wesley the Wizard Bowles. Wes, it's shifted. It went from flu to like cold, and I apologize.
If you stay sick any longer, people are going to think I've got you chained up in the studio.
I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. I went from these flu-like symptoms. This is going on a week now, day 8, and I apologize to everyone. My voice is, well, it's never great, but now it's just like hoarse and raspy. But the show must go on. Even Tanya, my wife, she's like, can't you postpone? I'm like, we're booked out 6 to 8 weeks, which would mean our guests from today would be like rebooking them, rescheduling would be a fucking nightmare. Just a nightmare. Yeah. So as long as you can handle it and handle my crazy voice, which will probably break up every once in a while, we've got some incredible guests today that we want to make sure we get on because it's relevant. It's, it's timely, especially with what's going on in the industry. So hopefully I'll be like Phoebe. Did you ever watch Friends?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I watched it. Yeah.
So Phoebe got a cold this one time and she was singing and all of a sudden she's like this raspy Bob Dylan-ish type. And she's like wanting to get sick after her voice cleared up. Yeah, maybe people will like this voice. I'll be like, bring back that voice.
I think my favorite episode of that is the one where they're moving the couch up the stairs.
Pivot. Yeah, Pivot. Yeah, it's great. Got a question for you, my friend. So last week you updated our audience on the changes, what's going on with Meta. They're going to be a little less domineering, maybe open things up a little bit. And I've seen multiple posts over the last, 3-4 days saying no changes when it comes to cannabis. And I haven't had a chance to dig in. Have we seen anything on this? Like, have they updated their T&C or terms and conditions?
So here's the thing. The terms and conditions specifically state what is allowed and is not allowed when it comes to cannabis.
Okay.
And it specifically does state in there that the talking about it, the use of it for your own personal, like all that stuff is okay. The promotion and sale of products is not. However, that seems to be counterintuitive to what's still happening. So people are still having posts taken down. And like I said last week, just because all that stuff was said and that's in the terms now, doesn't mean, that's been applied across the board and it's all good to go. This could take weeks. This could take months. It might have just been something that was said and it's going to be rolled out slowly. Again, some of these policies could affect just U.S., not Canada, right? They likely do small test markets. Yeah. Imagine open the floodgates to the entire world.
If you're going to open a market, we are regulated fully, top to bottom, barely can do anything. Open our market.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at the grand size of Meta, they're going to go, oh, cannabis, it's really not even on our fucking radar at the moment, realistically, right? I mean, I think the other interesting thing that's come out of all that Meta stuff is apparently the theory at the moment is one of the big reasons he came out and did that push for, we're going to be all free speech. We're going to do all this now, not just from the competitive side of they need to be more competitive with Twitter, but the TikTok ban in the United States is coming up on I believe it's the 19th.
Fuck. Yeah.
And the theory is that they did all that knowing that, people are going to be coming off of TikTok now. They're going to want to come back to Instagram. Apparently, this is complete opposite because people are now going to Rednote. I don't know if you know what Rednote is.
What the fuck is Rednote? All these new platforms.
So Rednote is not a new platform. Rednote is China's #1 app for. It's a TikTok style app. It's basically TikTok.
Is this the one where they feed their own citizens like educational, good information, and they use the TikTok version for North America to dumb down our
I'm not sure if it's exactly that version, but it's crazy to me that the government, the U.S. government banned TikTok because of fears of Chinese spying on them and using the user data and all that stuff. Okay. And now all these users are flooding to the official Chinese app, uploading their data. These people are learning Cantonese and Mandarin and shit on this app. You need to see some of these videos, man. People are just throwing their data
Apparently Mandarin is the easiest language. I could be far off, but somewhere along the line I had heard Mandarin was the easiest language to learn. Maybe we should learn that.
Yeah, maybe from a
Pivot.
like a linguistic like speaking. I don't know about writing and stuff like that, but yeah. But
Well, and speaking of that, so I've had some downtime. I rest as much as I can, which is not a ton. I'm still waking up in these like it's like a bucket of water sweat. Like I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm getting like 4 hours of sleep, right? Anyways, try to rest. I think it was earlier on during the flu, which again, something has shifted. I don't know if it's COVID. I don't know if it's what the fuck. I don't even know. I don't care. I just need this gone. So I'm resting. I'm on the couch. I'm not a, movie, whatever. At least not during the day. If I'm going to put a movie on, it's a weekend type thing, right? So I get into podcasts. Oh boy, I get into podcasts. So I started with, and I want to ask you this, I'll follow up with a question, but so I get into Rogan. I love, not all Rogan. I don't like just idolize Rogan because it's Rogan or anything like that. I followed him throughout his career. I used to watch him on Fear Factor, some of his early days podcasting, and he had Mel Gibson on. And if you haven't seen it, do you remember the craziness that went on with Mel Gibson way back when everyone thought he had gone off?
Yep.
And then they were chastising him, anti-Semite,
like
and I'm like, what?
Post Passion of the Christ days, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
it was just after that.
Yeah, well, and I mean that stuff would fuck your head up, like going through some of that. But anyways, and I don't mean that because of the religious aspect. It's the criticism that he would have received during that time. Anyways, he's a smart fucking dude, like really smart guy, and just the way he speaks, he thinks, it was really cool. So this rolled to the next one, it finished. And then I'm like, Rogan's got Zuckerberg on? What the fuck? I thought he was like anti-Zuckerberg, anti-Meta. And I don't know where I ever picked that up. Anyway, so I listened to what I could handle of Zuckerberg. Very much playing they forced us, we didn't have control, and I'm just like, bud, you're the CEO of the company. You still own the majority of it. You don't answer to a board of directors. I mean, you have a board of directors, but you don't answer to them, right? So they can't, in the case of Meta, they cannot fire. So, in typical fashion, your board of directors can fire your CEO. In this case, because Mark still is primary owner, can't fire him. So I started thinking through that. I'm like, well, hold on. Why did you not, like I get during the hearings and stuff, you made everything public, you released all the documents and all that, but at the same time, it seems that they were going out of their way with their fact checkers, especially during COVID, during the election times and stuff, that they became very far Democratic leaning and there was just no consequence to that. And now it's almost like, and again, I didn't watch the whole interview. I can only handle so much of Zuckerberg. With his new, what did you call it? His new...
his based transition?
Yeah. I'll give him this. I'm glad to see that he rolls now, so he's into jiu-jitsu and some martial arts. But have you ever seen him ringside? Like at the UFC?
He looks very awkward ringside.
Awkward?
That's
a fucking understatement.
There's a video of him walking. It was from years ago where he did a walkout with one of the UFC fighters and he's kind of at the side of him. Yeah. And like... Oh man, it's really, really awkward.
I like when I caught one because I did catch it live. I was watching UFC. I don't watch them all anymore. But the fighter's taking his shirt off and he's going to hand it back to his team. And Mark's like going to reach for it. And then he's like, he didn't actually get his hands on it. And he's like, well, like he's just kind of looking around. I'm like, you may be rolling, you may be into jiu-jitsu and doing what you're doing, but you ain't them yet, bud. You just ain't them.
Kudos to him though, because he does look healthy now. Like if you look at the pictures of him on Joe Rogan and recent images versus that clip and photos from when he was actually sat in front of Congress, like he was super pale, basically sunken eyes. Yeah. He looked sick almost. Like, and now he looks
I'll give him
great.
that. And again, rolling will do that. So he's got, and Joe even pointed it out when I was thinking, and I'm like, holy shit, his neck is getting thick. So if you've ever done judo or jiu-jitsu or anything like that, when you're rolling, you specifically work your neck because I mean, you're going to get fucking just pummeled in there. So he's been doing a lot of neck exercises. He's been doing a lot of exercises. The fact is I'm glad to see he's doing that. Yeah, it's not unlike, what did Bezos do? Did he go off on a fucking steroid? Like early days, what is with these fucking billionaires? They go from the geekiest of geeking, and no offense, but Bezos' early days looked like he was 60. And then all of a sudden he's jacked as fuck. He's got a $1 billion yacht.
Well, when you've got all the money in the world and you've got people to be able to execute for you, and you've got basically your time back, you're going to be able to do that type of stuff, right? Like,
it makes you wonder, right?
Good for them. Like, they look great. They look great. They're obviously, Jeff Bezos is living the life, whatever. Like,
I just, and I've thought it before, because like I'd love to, I've been into the, Huberman lab and all this kind of, and Gary Brecka, and very much looking at health and aging and anti-aging, right? And how do we affect the causes of that? Hyperbaric chamber is one, right? They use this. I ran into this study. They use it in Denmark and some of these Norwegian type countries. And, so a hyperbaric chamber is just pumping oxygen in, right? So whether or not you've got a serious cut or influenza or anything. And then who did I catch? It was Rogan and someone. He's like, yeah, I got a hyperbaric chamber at home. And I'm like, fuck you. But now, mind you, I thought they were still like $100,000+, right? Now you can get at home hyperbaric chambers now. Not that, something like Michael Jackson had or anything like that, but you can get them so that they 100% oxygenize the tent. And, does it have the pressure? I don't know. I'm sure it's not what you would want to use if you're getting the bends from a diving, diving deep or whatever. I don't know. Anyways, so follow up all that. Rogan, I've been into Huberman, and I've been really looking at some health aspects, and that's why I got into Huberman. I'll follow up with this because I need to get some answers from a PhD, which is, how does THC, in the way it attaches to your CB1 receptors, could be fucking with your mitochondrial? And I'm like, what? So I'm not going to say much more than that right now. I need to do some research and find out, is this fucking up shit? Like, even though we know it's good for you to a certain degree, is it fucking stuff up too? Anyways, I don't know. Like, I don't want you to answer with what I think you're going to answer. What's your favorite podcast now? Outside of Legacies, of course.
Well, we spend a lot of time looking at, not serious topics, but we're fairly business oriented and brand focused and stuff like that. So I tend to lean more to stuff that's funny to me. It's funny. It's a way for me to disconnect. I like stuff, watching stuff when I'm stoned. So I'll watch stuff from YMH Studios. So I'll watch.
You're still on to those, yeah.
Yeah, I'll watch Your Mom's House. I'll watch Two Bears, One Cave, and they're idiots sometimes, but I enjoy the shows just because it's just a disconnect for me.
What were their early episodes like? I always like going, okay, they're successful now, but what was like day one?
Their early episodes, specifically Tom Segura's and Christina's, were very much they haven't changed much. It's they're stand-up comedians, right? So
Well,
they find whatever's funny to them on the internet and in the world and bring it into that show.
Yeah.
And then they'll take pieces from that and build it into their stand-up as they do shows.
Comedians seem to have success in the podcast space, right?
Yeah,
like Theo Vaughn.
It's the clipping, right? Like you get a 30-second clip of you saying something stupid. That's like I was saying to you the other day, our clips are a little different because we take 2 or 3 minutes to try and capture enough context.
We got to get the context in there.
Right. Yeah. Whereas, we could make 30-second clips all day long, but people, anyway, I think that's what's easy for them, is that it's easy to be, not easy to be funny, because it's an art. They're
genuinely
as funny
people,
as they are, but but yeah, the only thing that's really changed for them over the years is the quality of their productions, right? It's just, they've got more money. They're able to produce it more. They have bigger teams, bigger sponsorships, that's really it. But yeah, that's the stuff I enjoy.
Your Mom's House. Yeah. What's the, what was I calling it the early days? Your Mom's Basement. That would have been a better fit. Your Mom's Basement. Tanya showed me one last night. I got to dig into it and look at it. Jason Bateman and Will, he's one of the Arnett's, I think, maybe Will Arnett, and the dude from Will and Grace. They've got a podcast, and she said it is hilarious. And she showed me this clip, and I started a lot. It was just Jason Bateman speaking to Will, I think it's Will Arnett, speaking to him, saying something about quit filling your, it was during their podcast, like, quit filling your face, like, shut up for a second so we don't have to hear you chewing. And I'm just like, because we podcast, I know there's been times where before we're recording, you're like, yeah, I'm going to let you finish that. You want to mute yourself for a second? You fucking asshole. Like, other than we did, and you allowed as executive producer to let it go through, was the Gagnon chocolates from our holiday special.
Yeah, we needed that ASMR in that one.
I thought that was funny. Anyways, so yeah, I got on this Mark Merritt. Our audience may or may not be familiar with. Regardless, he's one of our audience, one of our listeners had reached out. Super kind guy. He's like, Tom, listen, I've heard you complain about joint pain. I've been through this. He's like 55. This is my journey. He said, I've been looking at, I cut out sugar and how it affects this is where I got into the mitochondrial. And I'm like, yeah, this all makes sense. So cutting out like grains and certain stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really have a sweet tooth. I've, me, like, vitamins, supplements, and I'm preaching to the team and everyone. Meanwhile, I'm the one sick going, get the stuff in you, get it in you. But anyways, he sent this very kind note and he's like, look at this. He's like, there has to be zero tolerance on it. So I started doing this research. This is how I ended up over at Huberman again and watching some of his podcasts. But it is so fucking tough to cut out all sugar out of your diet. It is nearly impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is tough. So when you think of processed foods, right? Don't eat a lot of processed foods, but most of your, like even if it's clean bread, fermented breads, like they still have sugars and stuff in it, the way that it spikes your insulin. And Mark had even said he went as far as to get a glucose monitor just so you could see, or he could see, like, if I eat this, does it spike my insulin? Is it screwing me up? Because over time, I guess, this is where, the mitochondrial and how it affects your joints. And so now, thanks, Mark, I'm on this like deep dive into, how do I know how to eliminate the sugars and stuff, which I've been pretty good at over the years, but you'd be surprised. They've got sugar hidden in fucking everything. It's in everything.
I mean, have you, I'd love to get back on it. It was tough for me because it was kind of expensive, but I'll tell you, I never felt better ever. And I know that there's some controversy around this. People have mixed opinions on it. I never felt better than when I did carnivore for 2 months.
Like Atkins type thing.
No, not even Atkins, because Atkins, just you're still allowed
pure carnivore, just pure meat.
Pure carnivore. So
pure
just
meat.
meat.
Just meat. How the no, I can't do it.
I
couldn't do it.
Fucking, I felt you get after that first 2 weeks, the first week you get some headaches and stuff like that because you're having some withdrawals from sugar and things like that. But that second week kicks in.
But what about
zero
your
bloat, the zero
macronutrients from veggie? Like I get fuck potatoes.
Well, you could supplement. You could supplement with. You could. That's the point. You could supplement with some vitamins.
That's what Jordan Peterson is on or has been on.
Well, yeah, that's. I'd heard that a couple times. I heard that from Peterson. I heard it from Rogan, and I was like, hey, I know that there were some concerns about long term, and I don't think it's a diet you stay on long term by any means, but it's more of a kind of a reset, I guess. But again, my own experience with it.
Though, Wes, you could stay on when you look at protein source, and then as long as you're getting some of those phytonutrients from, dark leafies and good vegetables, ones that aren't going to spike your insulin, right? I think you can live on it forever.
Yeah, my problem is that you go to the fucking grocery store and you want to pick up 2 steaks and it's $56. And it's like, Jesus.
We're going to need to start a GoFundMe. You want to sponsor Legacies so we can pay for meat and get back on a carnivore diet. Like, I don't know. Meat is, because I went from being a vegan back to eating meat just to see, is this anything to do with what's going on with my joints? Talk about fucking shell shock. Like, I could not believe the price compared to what, we're talking 13, 14 years ago, even, because I was vegetarian and then vegan, but wow. It's a lot, man.
It's disgusting.
I sent you something that I thought was kind of funny. So I've always wanted to be a napper, someone that can just take these power naps during the day and recharge. And then I stumbled across this Nappuccino. Have you ever heard of this? I posted that video in our Slack. Hopefully you can play it. Love for our audience to see it. I love the sounds of it. I don't know if we can get away with it.
The Nappuccino. Oh my gosh. I've done that. Have you done it?
I've done it. It's a great nap.
So for those of you who don't know what a Nappuccino is, basically what happens is when you take a nap, you generally want to keep it to like 20, 25 minutes, right? And the whole purpose of taking a nap is to burn off what's called adenosine in your brain. And that's like the mental fog. You know, it's kind of what adenosine is, right? So you take that quick little nap, it burns that off. But the nappuccino is you take a shot of espresso right before you take a nap because the caffeine doesn't kick in right away. So by the time you're waking up in that 20, 25 minutes, now you got the adenosine burned off and the caffeine's kicked in and boom, you're ready to go.
So I know about the adenosine. I know about the mental fog. I've never gotten into the habit of, like, who was it? Winston Churchill used to have his afternoon naps.
I think that was for an entirely different reason, but
it could be. But I haven't been a napper. I don't know. I don't know how people do that. But if I can get to it, I think I love espresso. I drink that shit all day long.
I got to tell you, that sounds like the worst possible thing, like the worst idea ever. I don't know.
How do we need to, amongst our team, we need to schedule nap time. We'll just put it in our calendar. It'd be like when we're in kindergarten. Okay, kids, it's nap time. You go take your 10 minutes.
I have never once been able to get down for a nap and been able to get to sleep in that amount of time.
No.
First of all, and then to only sleep for 20, 25 minutes. Guess what? I'm waking up more groggy than I was before.
Yeah,
no way.
That's my problem is I typically wake up more groggy, but I will say this, just with battling the sickness over the last week, I did fall asleep mid-sentence typing something on my computer, like dozed off. I'm like in the middle of something and I'm like, type a couple more letters.
To me, I don't know, is napping even necessary if you're getting the correct amount of sleep at night?
Well, that's what he's talking about, though, is the adenosine, right? So adenosine will build up during the day regardless. Now, I don't know if, some of these alpha brains and all this kind of stuff prevent that from happening, but yeah, I don't know. You've got a good point, though, if you get a good night's sleep. I don't get a good night's sleep. Not over the last week anyways. I don't know. Okay, let's shift to some industry stuff. We've got David Brown coming on today as well as Ian Scott from Plantlife, and those are going to be interesting conversations. But something rubbed me a little bit wrong yesterday, and it was this Insolvency Insider. They've got a conference coming up at the end of January in TO, and it's the Distressed Cannabis Conference. I don't know how to take this. So Ernst & Young, Miller Thompson, I don't know who else is there. And I just kind of shared it as, is this where we're at? Like we're now, because remember the early days, remember the early days, it was how to raise capital in this market, the emerging green rush and blah, blah, blah. And now it's how to close your, doors and file a proper CCAA.
Here's my favorite part from this. I think this is my fucking favorite part from this. The tickets for people who are in the industry and going through the insolvency are free. That's great. That's great. And the tickets for people who are insolvency experts and consultants are $300.
Dude,
so this is just for those insolvency professionals. This is like shooting fish it's a fucking fishing with dynamite. It's come in here, you're free, obviously, because you got no fucking money.
Everyone that walks through the door is a potential client.
Jesus,
right?
Fuck.
Like it's like, to me, it's like you're in the African Sahara or something, and there's fucking vultures just perched on trees and waiting, and you're like, okay, dying animals, come this way, and you're ushering them all in. I know I'm poking fun at this, and it's a serious thing, right? There are a ton of companies that are struggling, and far more than there ever should be. It seems very self-serving. Shane Morris pointed out on my post, I think I put it on LinkedIn, Ernst & Young used to put out these state of the industry reports. I think they were on the quarter, and I used to get them. And then I completely forgot about them until he posted something. And he posted, some of us kept them. So he posted a previous Ernst & Young, and it was an outlook statement or a forward-looking statement about 2025. Wholesale price per gram, I think it was $4 to $6. What? What?
I have to wonder with this as well, like, and again, taking this seriously, but I'm just thinking more from if you're there and you're going to take the time to attend that event, you obviously want to listen to the information that's there, but I'm wondering, this has got to be a dry event. Like, this has got to be, this is an exciting event, right? Like, how do you keep people engaged at a conference like this?
Well, you'd have to make it like an auction. And on the job, anyway.
Yeah.
I got $40.
I just, it's got to be super dry and like
They should turn it into a Storage Wars or any of those like series, something like that. You're right though. Like, how do you? I mean, it's got to be. There probably can't be a lot of smiles other than on the.
No, it'll be a gloom environment. It'll be a glum environment for sure.
If it wasn't a Wednesday, I would attend just to attend. If you attend what is it called again? Distressed Cannabis Conference. If you attend the Cannabis Distressed Conference or are going to, hit us up. We'd like to know why. I think we know why. But what was the event like? What is it going to be like? What can we expect to see there? I don't know.
Also, if you have any recordings of, because it says that the representatives from the Department of Justice and the CRA and the OCS will be there to share their thoughts at the event. I would love to see some recordings from what the CRA and Department of Justice has to say. Because if this is not a fucking clear signal, I mean, we've had clear signals all the way, but if this is not the loudest one we've had so far, then
besides poking fun at this and being like, there's a serious fucking issue here. The fact that we have to have this, right? If you're holding a conference, this isn't even an outreach campaign via email, right? This is far more than that. I don't know, man. And there's also some, I won't mention names, but there's some individuals on panels that I'm like, why the fuck are they talking? What have they done for this industry? I know what they've done in some cases. Again, not mentioning names for anyone who wants to look at the panelists. I'm sure you'll see some names on there that you're like, what the fuck? Anyways.
Are we talking about maybe people who have gamed the bankruptcy system for their benefit?
Not so much that. I mean, yeah, there's a couple on there. I mean, I don't know, man. It's just a sad state of affairs. Let's go back to AI for a second. I posted something about StrainBrain. So as you know, I know the individuals that had just recently acquired StrainBrain. Great group out of the US, out of Chicago. They brought on Dina Rollman. Dina Rollman was an early days adopter at Green Thumb Industries. So she's their CEO. And she had a post, and I posted, agree or disagree, like, what are your thoughts on StrainBrain? And StrainBrain is really, it's meant to complement retail. It's not meant to replace. Is there a future where it replaces it? I'm not sure, but I wanted you to just share your thoughts again, because you had some really good insight as to, listen, this isn't changing it now. But anyways, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the question posed was, would an fully AI bud tender completely replace, regular bud tenders? Is that the future? And, I don't think so, at least in the current time frame. I think where I see the benefit of a tool, again, we haven't used the tool, we don't know, but I think the benefits of a good tool like an AI bud tender are more as a tool to empower both the consumer and the bud tender in the store in helping make proper decisions. Mm-hmm. In a system where we have SKU saturation, where we have 1,600 plus SKUs or whatever it is, narrowing it down to that SKU you may or may not know about as a bud tender. I mean, great, you might know half the SKUs in your store, you might not know all of them, right? And using this as a tool to narrow down, okay, my customer is looking for this, let me get you down to at least 3 or 4 recommendations. Then I can guide you further based on, I've had personal experience with that I haven't, right? I think that the people who implement it that way and don't look at it as, I can save money here by replacing the salaries of my bud tenders, and instead look at it as, how can I support and empower
for sure
my retailers to make a better connection with consumers and promote repeat buys.
Absolutely,
and things like that. They'll win.
And I don't think their intent is, for StrainBrain, it's not to replace a bud tender. It's, as you say, it's a complementary service. Like bud tenders, there's no way, in the largest of stores, some of them have 500 to 700 SKUs, right?
Right.
There is no way. I don't care which bud tender you could be, and I know some really good bud tenders. They do not know every single SKU. They do not have familiarity with every product.
Well, I'd also say too, if that was the case and that was going to happen, not even in our industry, it would have happened already, right? You can go online now and purchase anything you want from anywhere, right? Yep. And AI tools are available. This could have been applied already in other industries if they wanted to replace, look at Best Buy and stuff, for example. They've got big, expensive retail stores. Could they replace all of their sales rep in stores with AI and purchase everything online? All of this could have been done by other companies already.
Yeah.
Amazon could have done this, right? Replace, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I don't think so. I don't think that's coming anytime soon, fully replacing people.
Well,
and again, I know you said that StrainBrain didn't develop this to replace bud tenders, but what I'm more speaking to is, that there are companies out there with that mindset of, margin is everything.
Self-checkout.
Self-checkout, margin. Yeah. Don't even get me started on fucking, would you like to leave a tip? I've had that. Have you had that yet?
Fuck?
I've been at self-checkouts and it's like, would you like to leave a tip for the staff? And it's like, no, I wouldn't. I just had to bag my own fucking groceries.
Staff? Jeeves here in front of me? Well, where I get excited about this, and I've mentioned this before, even before becoming familiar with StrainBrain, is the future. And I don't know if the tech's there yet, but I'm sure it will get there. So let's say I love a certain product, right? A certain SKU, there's something I just love. And we have the information, and I know that it's not always available, but what were the true tests on the COA? What were the terpene profiles? What were the percentages across the board? The cannabinoids, flavonoids, et cetera, et cetera. And then when that product is no longer available, if that's my go-to, right, I would love for it to say, this is the closest matching product we have to that we have in stock. That would be fucking cool.
Yeah.
Right?
The other thing that I think is they're going to find challenging with this, especially because it's unique to cannabis for the most part, is everyone's unique experience with a product. You can have 10 people all experience the same strain or the same cultivar or the same type of product, same edible, and have slightly different experiences.
Yeah.
And unless there's some form of input to that model of consumers giving this is what I got from it, this is what I got from it, and aggregating all that, I think you're going to have trouble with recommendations that may not come out great if you're purely focused on the numbers and the terpenes and the, you know what I'm trying to say, right? If you're just going and recommending based on that, there needs to be some input method from feedback from people who have actually bought that.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out. We're meeting with Dina. I don't know if it's this week or next week. We're going to talk to her and try and get her on StrainBrain. We'll see if we can convince Dina to go and work for StrainBrain. How's that? No. We're going to try and get her on the podcast and demystify what this is, because I think at first glance, so many were like, nope, I prefer human bud tenders. And I'm like, that's not really, like, I don't think you read what Dina had said or watched what Dina had said about this, which is it's complementary, right? So I've been in some dispensaries where they have a kiosk you can go through, and it's really just their online menu. But imagine this as an implementation where I'm new-ish, right? Or sometimes it's just like, wild card. I don't know what I want today. And I end up walking out with a suppository. I don't know. But it's, just flipping through. But I think it's like a basic set of questions, what format potentially, what flavor profile, gassy, citrus, whatever, maybe cannabinoid content and something else. I don't know. I haven't dug into it enough. I've been saving this because me, I like to have it firsthand. So I don't know. I just see it as complementary. I see it as a necessary tool. But where we'll really understand this and the effectiveness is how much is it getting used, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a retailer spend, right? This is a dispensary spend. It's another tool they would have to look at. What is the advantage or opportunity to upsell, right?
Right.
Or move them into those categories. We see, Love Jamie, Love High Buds Club. We see some posts that they're like, bud tenders can't afford premium. Well, first of all, let me say this. If you are a dispensary and not offering your products at cost or very close to cost to your bud tenders, fucking shame on you. That is wrong to me. I know that there's some that are doing that, and I know there's some that do that. They're like, yeah, here you go, and distribute the samples as well.
How are they going to know what to recommend if they can't afford what you're selling?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If and I get that, I understand that, but I also understand the counter argument to it as well. Got something for you. I just saw something posted the other day. It's now January. You'll recall that these were coming out. Now you'll notice these aren't open. These are Sheesh gummies. See that?
Bangerine Dream.
We'll make sure I'll put it over here too, just in case you forget to switch the camera angle. So there's two flavors. These ones are yours. That's why they're unopened. Bangerine Dream, the sativa, Cherry D Indica. Okay, so made with solventless live rosin and real fruit juice. just like their drinks. Love the drinks.
Have you tried yours yet?
They're fucking phenomenal.
Do they taste like their drinks?
God. They're not identical. They're complementary. Like you can tell but you know, like the Bangerine Dream definitely has that orange, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's that orange sherbety creamsicle, right? But it's close. I don't think they were trying to mimic their drinks exactly. But what's cool is there's 4 in a pack, right? So 2.5 milligrams per, decent size. Texture's phenomenal. We know who make them. We won't mention that just in case, you know, if you
Are
want
they a smooth gummy, or are they like a gritty, you know, with the sugar coating kind of thing?
It's got a tiny bit of sugar coating to it. But then the texture and the smoothness, they're phenomenal, dude. They're just phenomenal. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and then I think Sheesh actually posted yesterday that they're now available. Check them out. That's my personal recommendation. I'm not going to tell you where to find them. I don't want to get in trouble with Health Canada. Anyways, we've got David Brown coming on. David Brown, a regroup with David Brown. We've been wanting to get him on somewhat as a regular. I think the difficulty is we have a lot of conversations, and sometimes the follow-up. I apologize if we've been meaning to follow up and scheduled you to get you on Legacies. Hit us up again. I've got a long list. You know this because you see the emails back and forth and trying to coordinate the right times, and you know we're set on a schedule. It can be difficult at times. It's challenging. So, anyways, we're wanting to bring as many people in as we can. You know, great voices, people with cool stories, and just a reminder, it's not just someone hit us up and they're like, you know, you guys only interview legacy people, and we're like, no. You don't have to be a legacy operator. It's not even about that, right?
Yeah.
It's just sharing really cool stories. We're saying legacies because there are legacies to this industry. There are legacies outside of this industry. There are ones that are in flight and being built now. You've got one. I've got one. So you don't have to be a black market legacy operator to appear on Legacies. That's not the way it works.
I also think we should also point out too, like, it's not just the small craft brands that we're going to have on here, right? We have to talk to the big guys too, and I think it's important for us. We don't. The last thing we want is another echo chamber on here where all we're talking to is small craft brands. As much as we love them, you you guys need to hear and see what's going on at the bigger companies as well. It's insight for you. It's and it's a good mixture. So we're going to cover the gambit. We're not going to stay in just craft or just the big guys or you know what I mean. We've got to cover everything.
You know who? Okay, so I want this for this year. Wish fulfilled has to happen. So you go back. Remember Andrew Baukham, Leven Therapeutics, Leven Magazine. If you're not subscribed to Leven Magazine, please check it out. He's been very gracious with us and featuring us in there. But it's just a fucking slick magazine. We've seen some shit ones, and this is put together very well. Beautiful, beautiful magazine. But our first foray into the mag was a Q&A. And one of the questions was, who's your dream guest? Mine, and I know it's partially yours as well, is the fucking legend Dan Aykroyd. Dan, we want you on the show. We actually have a connect. I think via Maris. I'm going to call on that, and I'm going to call on a favor and see if we can get Dan on. Been a little bit silent in the cannabis industry, right? So anyways.
Well, to put it another way, Dan, we're on a mission from God here. So we need
there we go. Do you know, I don't know why I forgot that. I love every movie he's ever been in. But around Christmas time, I always go back to Trading Places. Have you ever watched Trading Places?
Yeah,
Eddie Murphy. Yeah. One of my favorite movies of all time. And I don't know, as you think through the movies that Dan has been in, that doesn't always, but it's one of my favorite. And I'm like, oh yeah, fuck. And then I'm like, man, when are we going to get Dan on? We need to get him on. I'm sure we will. We'll make it happen, but that's my wish fulfilled this year. Who was yours?
I had a couple on there. I think I had, Glenn Shotwell from, she is the COO of SpaceX. And as much as Elon gets credit for, great ideas and really pushing SpaceX and marketing
your
the shit out of
operators
it,
are the ones
which
that
is
get
great.
Shit done, man.
Glenn Shotwell is severely under talked about. Like, she's not talked about nearly enough. I mean, she is, but I don't think she gets nearly the credit she deserves for running that company. I think she is pivotal to SpaceX and everything that's happening there. And I would definitely love to speak with
How do we make that one happen? Do we have any connection somehow. I mean, we're going to be talking with Seth Yakatan coming up soon. He's down in the Cali area, vicinity.
Well, I think she's down she may be down at Starbase now. She might be down at Boca Chica overseeing
Boca Chica.
Boca Chica, Texas. That's where they're doing Starship. That's where.
I just want to say
which, by the way, they've petitioned to have the name of that nature reserve where the base is built renamed to the city of Starbase. So I think it's Brownsville, Texas down there, and they are petitioning to have that renamed as Starbase, Texas, the gateway to Mars.
Really?
Pretty fucking awesome.
That's going to piss some people
well,
off. Well,
it isn't. The town is very much in favor from what I'm reading because SpaceX is doing a few things. They've built a bunch of roads and infrastructure down there. They handle and maintain all the infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
They've built schools. They've built medical centers. It's basically its own functional city, and they're just proposing to name it.
And it's Brownsville right now?
I think the overall area is Brownsville, and then that specific area where it is Boca Chica.
Boca Chica.
Yeah. So
Boca Chica. I want to keep saying that. It's like Georgia. There's certain, and Chechnya. There's certain names you just enjoy saying. Anyways, enough of that. When we get back, Mr. David Brown, Stratcann, will be joining us. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Mr. David Brown of Stratcann. David, thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me again.
It's you're a trooper, man. It's much earlier your time than it is our time.
Yes, it is.
I'm always conscious of that when I'm trying to book in our guests, and I'm like, because we run 2 slots, and not always, but sometimes, and I'm like, I feel like an asshole. But you're up bright and early. You can handle it. How have things been since we've last connected? I mean, we connect in a roundabout way on LinkedIn and comment on each other's stuff here and there, but how's things?
Yeah, good, busy. It was nice to have a little bit of a lull in the news reporting over the holidays, but things are picking back up again, and we have a busy schedule this year. I think we have 15 events and tours planned in a bunch of different provinces this year, so
15.
It's going to be busy. Yeah.
Does that take you right to the end of year?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
We may squeeze in a couple extra. We've had a few requests to come to a couple other cities, but yeah,
okay,
somewhere around there.
Very cool. Now the tours, what does that look like? I haven't had a chance to experience one yet. What's the tour like?
Well, first of all, we'll have to rectify that and get you out to one of the tours this year.
For sure.
We've done a few. We've done these for a few years now. This year we'll be doing a tour on northern Vancouver Island,
Okay.
and one in the Nelson area and the Kootenays. We're also doing a tour this year in New Brunswick. And so
wow.
the idea is generally we visit outdoor farms. It's just the logistics are just much easier to visit an outdoor farm.
Mhm.
We usually hit 3 farms in one day. We serve lunch at one of the farms, and it's just a chance for people to, go out and see cannabis growing and talk to the growers and learn a little bit. And people love to take selfies standing next to some cannabis. So yeah, it's a great time.
My early days, visiting facilities and taking pictures with these giant mums and stuff. And then after, I don't know, a couple years of doing that, they're like, "You want to get a photo?" And I'm like, "I'm good." Especially indoors, they all end up looking the same over time, right? One facility to another, white walls, big mums, lots of plants. Anyways, no, it sounds exciting, man. I want to get your input. Obviously, craziness going on in the Canadian political scene. Trudeau has he fucking finally and officially said he's going to resign, or has he resigned? Like, is he out of the picture yet? What is going on with this? And then I'd like to understand, what can we as Canadians, those that have some sort of stake in the Canadian cannabis industry, what can we expect?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions about this lately from people, and one of the things I've been helping clarify is, I think people sometimes have an understanding that when Parliament is prorogued, that legislation that is making its way through Parliament dies, and so when a new government forms, it has to sort of reset at zero. There is no cannabis legislation making its way through the House, but there is that big regulatory package that came out last year.
Mhm.
And while that is not legislation, so it doesn't sort of die on the vine, what we do have to pay attention to is when there finally is an election call, and likely well before the election call, all official government business has to stop. And that official government business would include the type of regulatory work that Health Canada is doing to put the final touches on all of those regulatory changes that they teased out last year at Gazette 1. And so the hope is that all of that is posted to Gazette 2 a little bit sooner than expected. I think the expectation was probably May or June.
Okay.
My understanding is Health Canada is aware of these timelines and really trying to work overtime. I'll use my air quotes on that for my government friends, but really understanding that there's a need to get it out before then. If it doesn't get out before then and government is paused during that election process, it doesn't mean it dies. It could still return under a new government. It could just be business as usual, and it's a few more weeks, and then boom, Health Canada puts it out. But it isn't guaranteed, and so it could also be something where the new government has different priorities, so they slow it down or shelve it indefinitely. So I think that's the biggest thing in terms of the industry and what's going on with Trudeau stepping down, and there likely to be an election call before October.
Yeah.
That's I think the biggest impact for people to look at. And then the other side of that is what will a new government mean
Yes.
for the cannabis industry? We can speculate. I think we all know that it's pretty likely that it's going to be a conservative government that forms government after whenever we have this election. So generally, I like to look at, how the previous government has, followed this cannabis file. And so I think those are the types of things that people need to be paying attention to. And one of the things we saw when the Conservatives were in power before was a lot of cuts to those federal programs, which means fewer employees managing those files. And so if you have an application that's coming in, it could end up taking, a matter of years instead of months. I think those are the, more of the nuances. And
Yeah.
really, even, when you get into something like taking away home grow, that would likely be a legislative change, which would mean needing, to pass something through Parliament. I'm not entirely sure the Conservatives would want to prioritize that either. So I don't want to, be seen as fear mongering. But I do
Yeah.
think it's important that people have kind of a sober understanding of what a new incoming government could do.
Yeah.
That
For
said,
sure.
I think it's also, important to stay hopeful, and perhaps industry would be wise to put together some guidance papers that could present the kinds of regulatory changes they want to see within a conservative context of red tape reduction. Oh, the liberals overregulated things. We're going to show you how to fix these things. So it's very possible, but things will be in flux, and then things could potentially shift post election.
Yeah. I think for myself, putting it into the context of cannabis and especially with applications, we know the government has bloat, right? Especially, in certain, well, I'll just say certain departments. I'm not going to name anything because, God, people get pissed off. They get so angry, David. But, I think the part that really rubbed me the wrong way was the amount that we were spending on consultants, right? At the federal level, which is just beyond ridiculous. Now, have I fact checked that? No, that's coming from the PC party, and that's for me. People think I'm very pro PC, and I'm like, I'm just anti Trudeau at this point in time. I'm not pro anything. I'm just anti, and I admit, he brought cannabis out. I voted for that. Yes, let's see it. Let's move it. But you're right. When we look at the previous PC government, they were not pro cannabis, not at all. So delaying applications, that's scary. What would you say is the one biggest concern? I mean, home grow, come on. That needs to stay, obviously. Medical, do you see the potential of the medical side of our industry disappearing?
I don't think in terms of, the sort of licensed producer to, authorized patient system, I don't see that going anywhere. One, that system was put in place by the Conservatives. Two, most of the companies that dominate that are, much larger companies that I think have, a pretty good grasp of government relations.
Yeah.
But, the big push from Conservative MPs for years now has been with home grow. And they've tried to make
Right.
it a big political issue, sort of saying that, the government is allowing criminals to abuse this program. So at the very least, I think they're going to have to follow up on a lot of that rhetoric, at least, in words. But like I say, that would likely require legislative action that I don't know that they would, necessarily prioritize. But my point is that they've been very vocally aggressive against medical home grow for quite a while. So I think it's something to pay attention to. I see no indication that they've shifted on that. And in a broad sense, I think, speaking to your broader issues of your opinions of Trudeau and the current government, I think it's interesting cycle to watch Canadians go through this back and forth. I remember how the cannabis community's opinions of Harper when he was in power, and I remember the sort of not necessarily well-founded belief that Trudeau was going to usher in this new age. I think we're in that disillusionment stage now. And I think people sort of go back to this idea that, well, if the party in power is bad, then the opposite one is good.
Right.
And on the surface, a lot of the conservative rhetoric seems like it could align with a lot of industry concerns, lower taxes, lower regulations. And if there's a way to actually guide them in that direction, I think that's great. I'm just personally skeptical based on what I see coming from the party and its members, that's a direction they would really want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
take things. In addition, it's politically speaking, even if they're improving the system, they're still improving a system that Trudeau created.
That's right.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
not really going to be in their interest to do.
It's the only credit I'll ever give him. That's about it. Okay, well, we'll see what happens. I think for the vast majority of us, our biggest concern is just the stalling, right? Stalling on everything. So anything we can do to support that and ensure that doesn't happen, you let us know. We'll do whatever we can. I wanted to touch for a second on, we've talked about this with other individuals. We've had meetings about this. I think we touched on it, maybe on our previous show when you were on data deals, right? Boring, not so boring, I don't know. It seems that there's a lot of even the indies, because we understand the indies were very up in arms about data deals and the ability to compete. We see the high tides, we see these other large conglomerate companies that, it's very clear they have data deal fees. It's not new at all. It's happened in every industry, but it seems that there's certain previously very vocal individuals that were dead set against these data deals are starting to shift and come around to, oh, okay, well, maybe they're not so bad, these pay-to-play models. And now, not all data deals are created equally either, right? We've spoken about that. Break this down for a second. Where are we at with data deals?
Sure. I think my perspective on the issue is from I sit in a position where I don't run a retail store. I'm not an employee of a retail store, so I'm going to have a different take on it. I think it's important for people to remember it in the context that this is an industry-wide practice in pretty much all consumer goods. I think sometimes people within this industry tend to look at things through the lens of thinking what we're experiencing is exclusive to the cannabis industry, is maybe an aspect of the government, trying to screw over the cannabis industry. This sort of paying for shelf space exists pretty much across all consumer products, whether it's allowed or not. In the alcohol space, my understanding is it's generally not allowed, but it happens there as well. It certainly seems to be very widespread in the cannabis space. I think more widespread than some people understand. You mentioned a couple names that I think people throw out of some larger, corporate chains, will say that often, there's accusations towards, but I think it's interesting that, a couple companies seem to get all of the heat when
Yeah.
I talk to producers and retailers, and it's pretty widespread, at least to some degree. I think uh, having that more nuanced understanding of what's actually going and what these practices are for and the context they exist in can help a more informed conversation of what we're going to do about it. So from my perspective, I think it's something that if we acknowledge it's existing, wouldn't it be better to allow it and then regulate it? And you can have
Yeah.
provinces actually monitoring these interactions, because what we see is it's happening. It's not allowed. No
And
provinces
it's
are
not
allowing
going
it.
anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. It seems to be very easy to get away with.
Yeah.
There was a recent example of a retailer who got in trouble for it. And I've seen some of the emails that I think were also emails that were forwarded to the AGCO that ultimately got that retailer in trouble. And it looked like they were maybe not being very careful. And so I think that's one of the questions is, well, why did this person get in trouble and these people didn't get in trouble? If you take certain steps, it seems that the regulator has very little they can do. And
Mhm.
I think that supports the idea that maybe it's something that can't be, banned, just needs to be regulated and allowed.
Yeah, or at least guidance. Regulated, one thing. I think a lot of people in the industry go, no more regulation, please, no more. But at the same time, you're right? Like it's not going to go away. It's going to be in the shadows potentially, so it's just going to happen in the background. Um, And again, not all are created equal. Go ahead, Wes.
The comparison to grocery is interesting because I understand some of the reasoning for grocery. I believe in grocery they refer to it as slotting fees, not data fees, right? It's a slotting fee so you can have your product in the premium section on the shelves. You own an entire section of shelves, and I understand the idea behind a slotting fee is that upwards of 90% of new grocery products fail in the market, right? And the vendor or the retailer needs to cover themselves from setting it up and setting it up in the systems and all that other stuff, right? So and obviously in a retail environment like a grocery store, you're getting that benefit of premium placement, eye level, shelf level, all that other stuff, where it seems like the data deals for the most part that we've seen so far or heard about on the cannabis side don't really come with much benefit. Like you said, a lot of that data that they're being provided is shit. It's really not good data. They're really not getting any benefit
or no data.
other than you want to be listed in my store, pay me. Like there's really nothing beyond that. Whereas at least on the grocery side, there's some aspect of sense there to me as to why that's in play. And also, would it be better to have a regulation more so that you can charge an initial slotting fee to get in there, to get set up, to cover yourself? If that product fails, then you know, but if it's successful, that fee goes away, right? Because it's a successful product, it's making revenue for you now. You know, does that fee make sense anymore? Rather than in a perpetuity for owning that shelf space in a retail store, you can't even see that product on the shelf for the most part. Does that even make sense? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and I would say that's an example where, by banning something and sort of pushing it in the shadows, it then becomes, easier for people to sort of be predatory with how they engage with it. Whereas if it's, allowed and monitored, it's, maybe less easy to abuse in that way. Now, I think it's also valid, and I'm sure many other people have pointed this out. I understand a lot of retailers' concerns, especially independent retailers who feel like the big chains have enormous advantages over them. And when they see examples of large chains that are, able to sell at such a low price because they're bringing in money in other ways, I completely understand that frustration. I would just say clearly they're doing it anyway, and just sort of clamoring that, oh, the government isn't doing a thing about it, or they're colluding in some way. I think the reality is it costs a lot of money to do these investigations. They don't have a smoking gun. If someone isn't being as blatant as writing in an email, yes, pay me X amount of dollars for this shelf space, or I won't cover your product. Well, then what are they supposed to do? This isn't CSI or the FBI or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, you brought up a good point though, Wes, and I wasn't really thinking about this. And some recent conversations we've had with various brands, there's a bit of a risk on the retail side, right? New product launching, they've got the distribution, we bring them in, great. But if you're not marketing, if you're not doing what you can, maybe your product doesn't stand out, maybe the branding isn't where it needs to be, there's some risk on my side to bring you into my store. I guess looking at it from that point of view is also something. Let me ask you this. Wes and I were talking about this pre-show, and it's the Insolvency Insider is hosting a conference for, right? It's happening in Toronto at the end of the month. State of the industry, it makes me start wondering about the maturity of our industry, because we joked and we said, early days, 2015, 16, 17, is the green rush, and the conferences were how to raise capital in this market that's going to explode. And now it's how to shutter, how to file CCAA. And we got all these vultures sitting around, right? And I always have hope and dreams that we will mature. And then I still have these conversations. Then I see these kinds of things. I'm like, is this our maturity? Is this where we are? Is this the defining moment? Where are we at? Are we maturing?
we went from the Lift Expo to the Collapse Expo. I think that's I think this is certainly, I think you can argue this is a sign of maturity as well. And I think you draw an interesting parallel there, right? In the early days, you had big conferences with, a lot of people on the outside, maybe in that sort of vulture-like position, looking to make advantage of the opportunities coming in. And now we see something similar for those folks on their way out. I think, there's maybe something to be said about a bigger. I was just having a conversation with a producer about this, of the, long-term trend that we're seeing the industry going in. And I think so many of the problems that we're facing in the industry stem to all of the hype in the lead up and all of the economic hype, the stock market hype. And I don't know that anyone is particularly to blame for that. I think that's just, the nature of the market we're
Sure.
in. but a lot of the issues we're dealing with can often be traced back to that and the fallout. And so a lot of the insolvencies, a lot of the failures we're seeing are either directly or indirectly, I think, connected to that. You have a lot of companies that, got into this just to sort of pump up the stock, and then, they ultimately fizzled out. And then there's the sort of ripple effect from those companies where, the extra volume that they're putting out is, dragging down prices. That makes it difficult for others to compete. A lot of them end up going out of business. So in that sense, I think there's a maturity there where I think we have to sort of get through this phase so that those companies that are operating on their fundamentals have a chance to compete in a little bit, uh, you know, more even playing field than one right now, dealing with those factors, dealing with that sort of price compression, dealing with an oversaturation from so many companies, rushing into this thinking, growing weed was going to make them millions. I think long term, that maturity will be moving away from a lot of the glitz and the glamour. I think you'll see one or two larger companies who will, occupy a similar space that we see, a Budweiser or a Kokanee or something like that in the beer
Yep.
space. But I think, you'll see a lot more of these, it's not necessarily the micros, but, independent private companies that are just sticking to their fundamentals. No one's getting, particularly rich off it. This is just farming and CPG, but they are, the fundamentals of their business are working. And it's
Yeah.
not just everyone going out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about this in contrast, right? So you've got your early days, your early adopters, right? That came into the industry. Some of them didn't take huge bankrolls and lots of capital. They just made it work. And they're still here. Some of them are still here. Some of them there's just no way they didn't make it. And I'm not talking, the canopies and stuff like that. I'm just talking, your SMBs, right? They're still around. And I think there is potentially a bright future for them if they can just hang on, right? And you mentioned that, right? They're not necessarily getting rich over it, but when you think about it in the context of, there's a lot of micro distilleries and microbreweries. These guys do okay in their neighborhoods, right? They've got a decent home, their families are taken care of. What more could you ask for? And I think that those companies, those micros, they'll do okay. But let me ask you on the flip side of that is, I still get all my updates from you. So early days, Ample, every Friday checking licensing. Now I just get these updates from you. Thank you. Are the ones coming in now, are they of that maturity level to understand what they're getting into? Because I got to think, like, I've got an application in, and you spoke to this, right? It used to take depends, right? It depends on how well is your application done. Does Health Canada have questions? Is going back and forth, blah, blah, blah. In some cases, it can take a year. Are these individuals or these companies coming into the market now, are they more mature? Do they have, rose-colored glasses on? Like, where are these operators at?
That's a great question and something I've been curious about myself. And I need to reach out to some of these newer license holders, maybe someone who's been, licensed in the last 6 months or so. That is one of my big questions. I think the fact that most of the new licenses are micros, I think shows that people have learned, at least from certain aspects of the market, they're not interested in, the incredibly large investment it would take to get a really big production license. And that tells me they're looking at the industry differently than someone entering the industry in 2017, 2018, 2019. So, there's certainly some evolutions, and I would hope anyone getting into the space at this point has done some research. And I would think that over time, that also adds to the maturity, right? That you're getting people who are, it's easy to sort of get caught up in the dream of, I'm going to get a cannabis license and I'll work out all the other pieces later. Hopefully, some of these businesses coming in a little bit later on see those missteps and recognize, okay, I need to, have a solid plan. I remember, a couple of years ago talking to people whose business plans were based around getting $5, $6, $7 a gram, wholesale.
Yeah.
I would hope a business coming in today understands they need to figure out how to make it work on, $1 or $2 a gram wholesale.
Yeah. It's funny because when I had posted about the Insolvency Conference, whatever the hell it's called, Shane Morris had said, remember when E&Y used to put out these reports, these forward-looking statement reports? And he's like, some of us held on to these. I thought it was a fresh one, but it wasn't. And then I'm like, you're right. I haven't seen Ernst & Young put out any of these in forever. But he posted one that was a forward-looking statement for 2025, and it was $4 to $6 wholesale. And I'm like, wow, like I get it. I get where we were at when these were getting published, but at the same time, I mean, this is Ernest and Young. This
There's
like,
some there's some blue sky in there, but I would also say I think that's a little on the high end of wrong, but you know, I I think 3 to 5 was a range that, and in the early days people were getting that for a quick minute, and I think if you
mhm,
take out this sort of oversaturation that we're in right now, I think prices might go back up to that. So I don't know that that's completely incorrect, but
mhm.
especially in the context of, looking at the market, where they were, there are some people projecting 10. I remember that I think there was a Deloitte report around 2018, 2017, maybe, that was
Oh
projecting
yeah, yeah,
10
yeah, yeah,
wholesale.
yeah.
So I won't bash them too much for that. But yeah, it's an example of, a lot of eagerness to think there's a lot more opportunity here than there is. And so, and I've said it before, but part of my consulting has always been telling people, your business plan doesn't reflect the realities of the market, and sort of pouring cold water on a lot of those ideas. And, if you're going to succeed in this space, you have to do it lean and mean.
Mhm. Well, I think it really sunk in. We had Amber Shelton on out of Cali, and she said her business model right from the get go was if we can't do it and make it at $500 a pound, we're just not going to make it. I was like, $500 a pound. I'm like, fuck. Back in my MMAR days, if you mentioned that, there's no way I would ever gotten into it. Um, but I want to touch on the global scene a little bit. But let's first understand the economics within Canada. How do we? Because I see it like I'm seeing premium flour wholesale at under a buck getting traded around and moved still. Now, obviously, volume affects that. Um, but like, what is going to bring us back to a potential $4, $5, $6 wholesale per gram? What gets us there?
I think the right siding of the industry. Like I say, we have to see more of these companies, unfortunately, leave the
Mm,
space so that there isn't that oversaturation. I think there's also, ongoing maturity with the regulations, with provincial distribution models are often a big sticking point and add a couple extra bucks onto costs. So as those systems continue to mature, and to the province's credit, there are a lot of examples of different provinces realizing, okay, we went a little too far with this. Let's roll this back. And so I think we'll continue to see that. And as the industry matures, I think they're able to do better government relations to get those kinds of changes made. So I think it will be a host of changes. I think you have to get rid of oversupply. And I think you have to clear the path from producer to consumer, so that there's, fewer hands in the pie. But I
yeah,
think you
yeah,
can ultimately get back up to that number. But I think we're years away from that, not
right.
months.
Well, and then, you look at, so we've got this big coast to coast push now, right? We've got Jonathan Wilson, we've got Alana, Dabble, and across the board, love it, love it, love it. But they've brought up some really interesting points, especially with Jonathan's early work when he was digging into this, is that there was an agreement signed that, you're at the provincial level, they would not profit beyond a certain means, right? Now, define certain means. What does that look like? But when you see reported profits coming from Ontario of 200 million plus dollars, how does that, one, how is it justified? But two, how do you see a bright light here? Is there a light at the end of this tunnel where they would step back and go, yeah, okay, we're making too much money. We're gonna cut some fees. We're gonna get rid of some taxes. Like, in all reality, I mean, and the reason I'm so skeptical about it, as much as I want to be positive, personal income tax. This was not supposed to exist beyond paying for the war, right? And here we are. Anytime the government has money coming in, they're not quick to let go of that money, whether that's at a provincial or federal level. Is there a potential that that could change?
I think it's a great question, and I think you raise a great point that would guide my cynicism of the unlikeliness of it as well. I mean, especially in the current economy we're in, asking governments to give up any kind of revenue seems like maybe not the path to go down if you have limited time and energy to go down certain paths. Uh, you know, Touching on what Jonathan has highlighted, I do think it's a really interesting point that extra revenue for those provinces is potentially coming at the detriment of a if not thriving, at least economically viable local cannabis economy in their province. So I'm interested to see, the direction they go with things. Um, at the same time, from a provincial standpoint, I can understand why they're not going to want to, give up those dollars in Ontario's um, instance. If that money, goes back to all kinds of, public works project, goes back to municipalities. And, there's layers of politics there that it's similar to what I've been saying about why I think the argument around excise tax has not been effective because ultimately it comes down to the province's revenue, not the federal government.
Right.
And are you going to see provinces, even in the best of times, are you going to see provinces willing to give up hundreds of millions of dollars? And we're clearly not entering good economic times. It wouldn't be very fiscally prudent of any province to say, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll give up
The
that
money's got to
$200
come.
million."
If they're
Yeah,
already spending it, means they're already budgeting it. So it's got to come
yes.
from somewhere. It was like this whole, we're going to cut the HST and for whatever, I don't know, 2 months or, something like that. And I'm like, guys, let's settle down here for a second. The fact is that money is not coming into the government now, which means it needs to come in from somewhere else. So because they budget, they pay salaries, they put us further in debt, but at the same time, when the money's not coming in, they will take it from somewhere else.
I
And
think
for
the
me,
frustrating part of it too is when you look at some of those FIFA requests that were put in, there's no line item. There's no where is it going? I think if we had a better understanding at least of what is that money being used for, rather than lump sum going back to the finance minister, it's a little different, right? If we could see the actual benefit that money is giving to the communities and to these provinces, maybe that's a different story. But right now, it just looks like there's no accountability when it comes to it.
they
right?
just lump that in, right? So at the provincial level, it goes back to the minister of finance, and then from there, it just is amalgamated and bulked in, and the spending isn't necessarily audit controlled, right?
Not necessarily, although in Ontario's defense, and it's been a few years since I've reported on that spending, but Ontario was one of the better in terms of being transparent about where that money was going. In the first couple of years, almost all of it went to the municipalities. Since then, it's gone. They don't necessarily, it's not line item, but they can say, oh, this has gone to healthcare or this has gone to public coffers in some way. My province, British Columbia, is completely opaque. There's no understanding of where that goes. Quebec has been pretty clear, at least in all their messaging, that this is going to different aspects of health spending, sort of, frankly, anti-cannabis public education. That said, there was also a really interesting report last year in a publication in Quebec, I forget who, that did some pretty deep dives and found that from what his findings seemed to conclude that maybe that money was not being spent in that way. So
Hmm.
there are some good questions there, and certainly the government looks at this as a cash cow, and you're not going to get them to give up that cash cow, regardless of how justified that spending is. And that's it's a difficult conversation to have with the general public, I think. So
Yeah, for sure. I still look at it as, it's the government just still locking kids up in the room and saying, you guys sort it out. These are the rules. This is what we're doing. You guys go figure out a way to play together. And if not, sorry. That's just the way it is.
even beyond the big sexy stuff like excise and provincial revenue, and personally, I think there's a good argument to be made that I would personally rather see that provincial revenue for distribution go back into my province rather than it being run by a
Yeah, yeah.
private company that maybe isn't even based in my province. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that side in the conversation as well. But uh, I think that, when I talk about maybe some of those changes to provincial systems, it's not necessarily the big ticket stuff. It could be little simple things like what British Columbia and Ontario are experimenting with direct delivery
Yeah.
and flow through of just trying to um, streamline that system a little bit more. And there are a lot more examples like that where if we can take those hands out of the pie,
Yeah. Yeah.
not only taking less of a cut, but just fewer people reaching in the first place.
Efficiencies will help for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
in lieu of any tax breaks, just make it more efficient, make it easier to operate. Reduce some fees here and there, but taxes, I just don't have hope that taxes will ever go anywhere just because of our history.
No, no.
Yeah.
And speaking to the bigger point of, what will help raise prices, you talked about export a little bit, and export's a great example where, that's leaving a lot of that pressure on that oversupply here in Canada. And we've seen now prices start to, over the last year and a half, have start to come up a little bit at the wholesale domestic level. And so I think that's an example where, on one hand, I caution people against putting all their eggs in the export basket because you never know the direction that's going to go. But it is an example where as soon as you start to take some pressure off the oversupply, the price does go up. And consumers seem to be willing to pay, on average $8 to $12 a gram, for value adds, far higher. But if consumer prices are staying relatively steady, there's no reason that, the wholesale prices should continue to decline.
Right, right, right. Well, speaking of export and global, I do know of a few operators that all their eggs are in one basket. They are right from purpose built. They are going to be EU GMP, and they will only export. I think of like Jeff Black, right? He's just outside of Ottawa. He's a CPA. Seems that all the CPAs that run these companies or own these companies do fairly well. Canara,
Shocking. Shocking.
You got to know how to budget, folks. But speaking to that in export, let's understand where we're at globally, because we've had Tony Chapman on previously, and he's like, Canada has squandered our advantage, our opportunity, first mover advantage. And to certain degrees, I do agree. But at the same time, you see momentum, you see movement where, Slovenia is coming on board, and there's new reform happening through Germany, and there's a ton of global change happening when it comes to the adoption of cannabis. Maybe they're looking at Canada going, look how rich they're getting off of this. I don't know. But where are we? Yeah, exactly. The government. Where are we when it comes to the global market, and where does Canada fit into that?
So I think the first thing I would say is I would push back a little bit against Canada has squandered the first mover advantage. There's certainly pieces of that I think that are true, but I think, that's a little hyperbolic. I think Canada is still absolutely the global leader. There's a lot of things that we could do to, further solidify that role, but Canada continues to dominate the stage, especially in terms of export. Australia, Israel, Germany, and through Germany, much broader parts of Europe, there is a big demand, not just for cannabis in general that, Canada is able to satisfy, but frankly, Canadian cannabis. And I think the brand has carried over, and we're not only seeing these big shipments from larger producers, but we're seeing smaller producers that are, I know a couple micros here in BC that are almost exclusively export now. I can't even buy their product anymore because people are willing to pay more for it and value it in, say the German market. So, I think that's an example that, this first mover advantage is something that we're still very much enjoying. And I think we will continue to enjoy until if and when the U.S. ever comes up with, a federal system that allows for something like export. And I think, we're a long way away from that. And I don't see any other countries stepping up to, push Canada out of the way. I think when people say that, they're expressing frustration at a lot of potential bigger opportunities that they had hoped would happen with. But I think a lot of that ties into a lot of those expectations around, sort of the stock market boom that we were talking about earlier. I don't think, the inability to reach those unrealistic expectations isn't really a failure of legalization. It's more just, those were, that was more hype than realism.
Do you feel that, so U.S. market in limbo still? God knows how long is that going to happen? Do you feel the U.S. has the opportunity to displace Canada when it comes to that? With the yeah.
It's just size and scale and finance, absolutely. And who knows? I think I mentioned this the last time I was on your podcast, but Trump is a wild card, and maybe he decides to legalize, but I'm skeptical. And the reality is, I can't see a path forward for legalization that would be simple. I think it would be incredibly complex and take a long time to sort of harmonize what the U.S. has going on in a way that could then translate into, the internationally regulated industry. And I think that's one of the big advantages that Canada has, is the sort of more boring, slow, sober approach we took to legalization is more in line with the types of countries that we're interacting with that, have taken a more strict or at least highly regulated, stance on it. And I think there's, on the global perspective, I think there's a lot of people who look at the U.S. as sort of the Wild West, and maybe not the way to go about legalizing and regulating.
Well, I mean, even outside the challenges of legalization in the U.S., you see a lot of, they've got the THCA products and what's going on with the hemp and, counterfeit products and testing. Like, if I was in the German market, Australian market, looking at that, it'd be like, I need to really put some tight controls and guardrails around the product that's coming in. But there's no future, I can't see one anyways, where Canada exports to the US if they ever legalize.
I mean, I think it would go, ultimately both ways. There's certainly, I don't think there's anything particularly magical about cannabis being grown in Canada that would somehow be better than, cannabis grown in the US. Maybe it could compete, economically.
Mhm.
I think you would see, I think you would see it both directions. I think that the big issue is if and when the US enters that market, they would supplant us on the global stage, just in
Mhm.
terms of sheer export
Right.
capability. But, we have a lot of deeply embedded experience and infrastructure. Even once things kind of kick off in the US, and like I say, it would take years for those regulations to be put in place, in my opinion, and actually be functional. And many years after that for these companies to really kind
Right.
of, hit the ground running. We've seen it in Canada where even someone who knows how to really grow really good weed in a brand new facility, it could take a couple years to sort of dial things in. So I don't think Canada needs to worry about that anytime soon. I think 5, 10 years down the road at the earliest.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. That's hopeful. That's hopeful. All right, forward-looking statements, David. I always like getting them from you because you seem to have your finger on the pulse. Where can we expect 2025 to land us in this crazy industry?
I wish I knew. Obviously, the current and ongoing changing political system in Ottawa, changing government in Ottawa, I think will be a big factor in whatever happens. I don't think we're going to see anything too big and sexy and exciting. I think we're past those days. I think it's just sort of slowly moving towards um, uh, evenly balanced, the sort of evenly balanced industry we're talking about. So I think exports will continue. I think that's a good thing for the domestic market. I think we'll start to continue to see slow changes at the provincial level that will help producers and retailers, eke out a couple more pennies per gram, and ideally that continues to be enough to allow some of these companies to stay in business.
Nice. And you say pennies per gram, and that matters. I mean,
It matters a lot.
it matters.
It does. I talked to growers who are ecstatic that they got an extra 10 cents per gram than
Ooh,
last
yeah.
time. It's the difference between paying their trimmers. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, it's always a pleasure having you on, man. We appreciate you spending the time with us. We'll continue to look for opportunities to bring you in, but thanks for joining Legacies. Always a pleasure.
thanks, guys. You as well. Have a great day.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Ian Scott of Plant Life. Ian, thanks for joining Legacies, man.
Pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me.
It's always a good day when we get to join someone from the East Coast or West Coast is joining us because you bring sunshine.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know if the sun's shining here today in Edmonton, but usually you're looking pretty good. A little probably
Yeah,
chillier out here than out that way.
and we were joking just before we started recording. I'm wearing my Canucks hat. Edmonton is number 2 for me. Believe it or not, even though in Ontario, the Leafs are way down the list. I mean, even Chicago is higher up because of the whole Griswold and Bedard, and they're higher up on my list of favorites. But anyways,
Absolutely.
we appreciate you joining us, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What before we go too far, I'd said, love the background. Does the chameleon mean anything to you?
Not directly, no. It's actually a picture from a talented tattoo artist out in Alberta. So
Okay.
Derek Turcotte, a gentleman out of Canmore, who airbrushes obviously in the
Oh,
pastime. So
wow.
a little chameleon up there. I could maybe
So
say tie it to the noble guys, the little chameleon connoisseurs next Friday pack. Could be a tie in there.
hold
Show
on.
those
So
guys a little love, but
is that not a photograph? Is that a airbrush painting?
that's an airbrush
Get the
painting.
fuck out of here.
That
That
is
thing's
Yeah.
so
insane.
nice. Okay, let's give a
Yeah.
shout out again. Who is it by?
Derek Turcotte from
Derek
Canmore.
Turcotte, and he's a
Derek-
tattoo artist.
Yeah, absolutely out of
I'm
Canmore.
sure he's got an
so
IG. We'll find him. We'll tag him.
Yeah, that's
Because
beautiful.
that is.
He's talented dude. Talented dude.
I
He's,
wasn't sure if maybe it's like this, hidden secret message about how you have to be a chameleon in this industry because it'll just fucking eat you alive if you're not.
it feels like it. It feels like it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. Well, listen, we want to understand a few different things here. One, we'll get to further on in the conversation, which is how does a company the size of Plant Life have the view or the public perception, unlike certain other chains, we'll say throughout Canada, because you guys you do it right. But I want to back up as far back as I can. When we had first met, you were in hospitality, and you brought a lot of
Yeah.
that hospitality into plant life. And I want to understand what that background was and the success and the maybe craziness or the thoughts of coming, we're going to get into cannabis now. Let's do cannabis. Yep. Cannabis is the way we're going to go. Uh, and then the success and the rollout, because you walked us through some craziness in the early days of, as plant life was coming online. So what's your background and experience first? Let's start there.
I guess dating right back to the beginning, my retail world experience coming out of in the end of high school. There, I did a little stint at the old superstore. They opened a superstore out in St. Albert, so
Okay.
that was the genesis of the old retail experience there. And then on the next step, leaving high school and stuff, in St. Albert, actually full circle. Connect Logistics was out here, who is
Oh,
actually the supplier, so they ship everything cannabis related for AGLC right now. So
okay.
coming out of high school, I did a little evening stint there, and thought I was rich. Coming out of high school about 20 plus
I've
years
got
ago,
drug
work
money.
100% working out of working nighttime was a little 10 to 6 shift, but making like $18 an hour. There was overtime and stuff. So ripping around in a $2,000 car with a $6,000 stereo, and living large when I was 18 years old there. So did a nice little stretch at Old Connect. So a little bit. AGLC was actually my neighbor there. So the old partners in the province there were my neighbor, and hopped over from that time into the hospitality world. So young and early 20s, wanted to be in the nightclubs and music and women and all that kind of fun stuff that comes in time with being a young gentleman. I'm out there, and did a little stretch in hospitality, and had worked out at the airport for a good stretch. And one of the team members I was working with had hopped with a little bar in Edmonton, and she kind of passed it along and was like, "We're opening up a little shop on the south side. I think you should come apply." So popped in there, sat down with a couple gentlemen, and they actually ended up being my partners. So I've been my partners for the last 10 plus years there. We started at store number 3. So
Okay.
opened up, started at store number 3. It's called the Canadian Brew House. So a little sports pub that is prominent across Canada, recently in Ontario since COVID there as well. And
Mm.
opened up probably about 25 locations from in and out, traveled around from Fort St. John up in BC to Moose Jaw, Victoria, Abbotsford, Winnipeg, all the way around, cut a nice little swath across Western Canada. And when legalization was coming, we have a little gathering that we do every year on the brew house side, and we call it ideation. So it would be in the spring of every year. We get our team together, our general managers, our AGMs, and kind of have a little culture building would be the biggest piece of it. So get
Mhm.
the crew together, talk about coming at some of the wins for the year. We sold 100 swimming pools of Bud Light and this many 3 million chicken wings and all that kind of fun jargon we did. And then we'd always spend the last couple days and we'd travel somewhere. So generally in the hospitality industry, bounce down to Vegas is kind of the tip of the spear and see what Vegas is going on. Been down to Chicago and see the food and wine show and stuff. And prior to legalization, we decided that Denver was in the cards.
Mm.
So Denver was legal at that time. I wanted to see a little bit of how it was impacting the hospitality industry, and do a little bit of learning and stuff down there. So loaded up the team, went down to Denver, had a bunch of meetings. We like to mix in some meetings and some business there as well. So we're able to sit down with Pete Coors. Got to go and
Oh, wow.
see Coors and Molson, obviously the headquarters down in Denver there. So had a little meeting with Pete Coors and got to share a beer up in the office with him and asked him if they were into cannabis or if that was on the radar. And he said no, whether that was what he was a lie or what he could tell us at that time. And then we actually woke up one of the mornings and Ricardo Baukham. So Ricardo was with Grasslands Agency down in Colorado there now, in a marketing agency. So sat down with him and kind of gave us a little bit of lay of the land and talked cannabis, rolled everybody up, ate a bunch of cannabis, smoked a bunch of cannabis, went to the Colorado game and came home, and started kind of building from there. So some of the relationships bounced down to the states there and California, Colorado, down to Nevada and stuff, and got a little
Wild.
bit of kind of a little bit of the lay of the land for us. And came back heading into legalization like we thought we knew what we were doing, and um, and we did a little bit, but lots of learning as you go across the days. So
Wow.
hopped into legalization, and then kind of the rocket ship took off there. So um, our first location opened up on October 30th. So a couple weeks after legalization, we were open up in Lloydminster, so right on the border city, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and kicked the doors open up there. And we did have 9 stores built out that we were ready to rock and roll. So we kind of had the phases where open up this shop and then kind of trickle down. And heading into that winter time and Christmas time, the moratorium happened in AGLC in Alberta with the supply constraints. So we had one shop open, and they shut us down from opening our next 8 shops there. So we're kind of left holding the bag, wondering what the next steps were,
Jeez.
wondering when we were going to be able to open up some more locations, and kind of put a quick halt on us from really getting going there. So was a little slow out of the gates, and stuff started to trickle down. So we actually had both. We had 2 locations, staff trained up, everybody trained up heading into Christmas time, and I think it was right around the end of November that they're like, no stores are going to be opening. We don't have a time frame for you. We don't know
Wow.
when more stores are going to get open. So we having hospitality armed to us as well. It was great that we could still keep people with some money in their pockets if they were so inclined. We were asking, have you bartended? Have you
Yeah.
worked in the kitchen, prepped? Is there anything you'd like to do that we can actually keep some funds coming over the holiday season? And then heading into February, we got a couple more shops open. So rolled a
Wow.
couple more in February there in Edmonton and Spruce Grove, and then I'm heading towards the summertime. Things started to open up, and it was game on. We opened up 5 shops in 9 days, so more or less
Jeez.
tripled our size in about a week and a half's time. And then over that year, I think we grew up to about 14 shops. So it was slow to the gates, and
That's
then
not
it
slow out of the
eventually
gates,
made it.
man. That's not slow. Listen,
Fair, fair,
that's not
fair,
slow out of the gates. Like, and there is nothing slow about anything you just said.
fair
Nothing.
enough.
Now, what was the decision though from Alberta that they didn't want to open any more shops? Like, what was going on?
Supply constraints. So
Oh,
they didn't have enough product for the market.
okay.
Was the statement from there. So again, I know when we first opened up in Lloydminster, it was like, would you like tweed plain packaging or would you like tweed plain packaging? And that was what we got. So
Jeez.
out in Lloydminster, there's a bunch of plain packaging consumers out there, just to kind of see where things have morphed. I remember when ordering and stuff was first online, and it kind of would go live around 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I'd be in bed at my hotel room waiting for the AGLC site to kind of go live, and you'd mash the button and buy $60,000 of DNA lemon skunk or plain packaging or whatever you got your hands on, and we're
Yeah.
just happier than shit to get that because that was all that was in the market
Well, I
at
was
that
just gonna
point,
say there
right? So
wasn't much available. And so wait, so we're
no.
talking 2018 into 19 then, or
Legalization year 17 or 18?
well, so original legalization 17, and
Yeah,
then oh yeah, I'm thinking cannabis 2.0. Never mind.
yeah. So yeah,
So you would have
would
been
have been
17 and
October.
18. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
and Alberta they were slow. Well, I mean Canada in general was we got to wait, right? We've got framework, we've got legalization, but everyone needs to come online. They need to be able to distribute. They've got to have a means to do so. There couldn't have been that much available, and I'm just thinking the whole time because you come from hospitality, you understand supply, demand, consumers, customers. You've got menus, right? Like, and curating those
Yep.
menus. Obviously, it's not new to you into this space, sure, because it's based on what's available. But was that a point of contention at all? Going, hold on, like, and I mean from the group going, we're going to do this many stores. We want to do this many stores, right? High hopes, big dreams. And but at the same time, from a group that comes from hospitality and understanding this, did you not see that as a constraint? Like, if we can only get 5, 6, 7, 8 brands in here in the early days, was that not going to potentially tarnish the business out of the gate? Or was it just everyone's chomping at the bit? Legalization's here. They don't care if there's one SKU, we're buying it.
That was the latter. I think it was everybody was chomping at the bit. Nobody knew what we were doing. Everybody was doing the best they could, from other retailers to AGLC to everybody's making the best go with the kind of the cards they're dealt out of the gates on there. So to curate a menu from our end, it was like, we want whatever product we can get. So there was no curation at that point. It was like, this is what you got, and you're lucky and happy to get it. And
Right.
let's put it in the shops and see how it does. And I'm at that point for consumers coming in as well. It's the beginning of legalization, so they don't know any better either in that
Right.
regards,
Right.
right? So they're seeing legal cannabis. Could have been sitting in AGLC since the summertime or before, and now we're talking Christmas time in there. So the logistics of how long the product was actually there was that. But no, there was the consideration for menus and curating at that time. It was go, 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 get what
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can get.
If it's
Yeah.
available, we'll order it. Yeah. Is Tweed still on the menu at Plantlife? They've got some decent products. There's some decent products. They took a shit kicking over the years, right? But yeah.
They have their some of the flour and stuff that's out from them. It's the best products they've had in a while. Claiborne's just new coming to the market in Alberta there as well, so we'll have just landed there. I'm not sure how Claiborne and the rest of the country I heard is doing fairly decent as well. So
Okay.
as everybody, you play the cards you're dealt. You kind of learn
Yeah.
as you go on the fly, and I think with anybody in the industry, everybody is improving. That's the reality out there from products coming to market. I think for the most part,
Yeah. Yeah.
some things might not be the product for me, but they
There's
are
always a
improving. I
market,
can
though.
definitely say that.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
always a
yeah,
market.
absolutely.
And I think that's, as an OG type, it's like, nah, I want premium. I want living soil if I can get it. Well, that's me, right? But then I look at, my daughter's generation, and they're like, general admission, botanical terps. And I'm like, yeah, at first I was hard on it. And then I'm like, whatever. People drink White Claws. Like,
Where do you fall on that, Ian? We heard some. I think it was Owen Allerton at an event we were at a couple months ago saying, don't be building as a retailer. Don't be building your menu based on your own preference, because that'll be the death of you. Kind of where do you fall on that? Like, do you have a portion that you reserve for stuff for yourself, or is it
Yeah, absolutely. I as well like the finer things in life too. So we have a group, the team that does procurement for me as well. We definitely pick the items that we enjoy. But you look, I coming from the liquor world and coming from hospitality and walking into a liquor store, there's a reason why you walk in and it's like there's a full case or full shelf of Bud and Bud Light and Canadian and Coors Light, and then you have your craft portion as well. Same aspect exists in cannabis there as well. You have your spinach and your Tweed and your Good Supply and so on, and then you have your more elevated products there as well. So again, if I want everybody to smoke a next Friday product, a Carmel product, Guerrilla Gardens, whatever it might be, as far as a product that I enjoy, doesn't mean everybody's going to spend $40 on an eighth or $30 on a pack of pre rolls as well, right? So yeah, if you're shopping with your own product or with your own pocket in that, and expecting the industry is going to react to what you're doing, you're definitely missing the ball for sure.
yeah, yeah. So year one, you hit 14. Is that correct? 14 stores or
Yeah, I
year
think we're
one?
at
Yeah,
about
yeah.
14. Yeah.
Was it always on? And what are you at now? I don't want to get the number. It's 40 plus. I know that, but
Oh no, we're back at 39.
39.
40 is
Okay.
right on the docket, so we'll be back
Okay.
up to
Okay.
40 here shortly. We were at 40 and then lost our Jasper location over last
Oh,
summer with the
right,
fires out
right,
there.
right,
So
right.
we
Yeah.
we went down a location there. Yeah.
But was that always on the roadmap? Was it just land, expand, find the property? You guys know the model, right? You know the model, and you've been in again, open a store, open a store, open a store, open a store. It's not new to you, but was it, we want to have as much coverage throughout the province as possible? Or was it, if it's working, we'll just keep expanding, we'll keep doing it?
I think a little bit of both. Coming from the hospitality world and having the relationships that we had in there. You come into this province, you have great locations. Locations is key and crucial to me in the industry there as well. You can be a great operator, you can have a great menu, you have a terrible location, and you're fighting an uphill battle in that regard. So I think we've grown and we've scaled businesses prior, so it's always on our radar to grow and scale there, and seeing some success and being able to make a go of it. We might have pulled the plug if we were struggling at 20 or struggling at 30 or whatever that number is, but it's always kind of grow and grow in the province for sure.
Hmm. What goes into selecting the location for you guys? Unless it's secret
Ver-
sauce. If it's secret sauce, you don't have to
There-
share. We'll share off recording. But
yeah, I think with anything you look around, and we've always done good to be anchored by a big player, right? You'll go to lots of our locations, and we're generally in a big box or power center, so we'll be close to like a Walmart or a Costco. We
okay.
generally don't spend too much time in the neighborhoods, and nothing wrong with that. It's great to be serviced in a neighborhood and a community, but somebody's going to Costco and
Traffic. You're looking at
and they're
traffic.
making it on
Yeah.
the traffic and
Yeah.
traffic rolling around, right? So lots of those locations. I'd say we have some grade A locations around there. So a huge amount of kudos to the team that's doing that. I'm not the one looking up the locations, but I got to give them their gold stamp on that for sure. Where
Well, I mean,
as anybody,
that's somewhat risky too, right? And I mean, not for you guys. You guys have the model dialed in, but let's say I'm a newbie out of the gate. I'm crazy enough in Ontario. I'm going to open a retail location. I'm not necessarily like rents come into play, right? And when you're talking about those anchors, so you think Smart Centers or the Costco's, those are anchor tenants. They get reductions in rent in a lot of cases because they're drawing you, right? They're going to draw other tenants. That to me is scary. And I mean, Alberta real estate is not cheap.
it is not. Yeah, it is not. You go up to Fort McMurray. We have a location right across from Rogers Place in the Ice District there as well.
Oh,
Kind of our
wow.
flagship right downtown. So right where the moss pit is, if you look closely,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
little
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
little plant life in the background. I wish that sign was bigger and everyone knew others are scoring goals. But with
Could you
anywhere,
put
not
lights up every time they do score, like the old Budweiser? You remember the thing that they had at home? Anytime they'd score and the Bud Light would go off, you could do that.
yeah, we have the goal lights in the front windows we run
You
every
do?
hockey game, but we
Nice.
actually did the thunder sticks. So like
Oh
the
yeah,
thunder
yeah,
sticks,
yeah.
you go to the game and bang them. So we got thunder sticks in navy, and then it's actually a joint in the middle with the cherry and orange and says plant life on it. So we have
That's fucking brilliant.
some joint thunder sticks. So you might see those out in the wild during hockey games
I
there as
love it.
well.
Oh
So
my God.
we've tried to infiltrate out there, and the Oilers are a good hockey team right now. So
Oh
we're
yeah.
excited for another playoff push.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Last year was gut wrenching. It was very difficult. We'll get there. We'll get there. But okay, so let me ask you this now. We'll continue to build on this, but there's certain, like I said, we'll call them bigger chains. And you guys are just so different. I don't even like, you're in that category where you're at 39 stores for whatever reason. So we had David Brown on. And I'd asked him, I'm like, it's really strange. I think it was off the recording. We were just, shooting the shit. And I said, how is it that a High Tide, Canna Cabana, Value Buds, some of these other, they get eaten alive. They get, but then a Plant Life, you talk to anyone, they're like, I love Plant Life. Everyone loves Plant. It doesn't matter if you're an operator, you're another competing dispensary. They love you guys. They love you. Like genuinely, this industry loves Plant Life. What is the differentiator? Is it the public perception? Is it the way you treat employees? What is it, or do you know?
I think it's a combination of all of them, but it's kind of all. I think with anything in the industry, there's a lot of relationships out there. Myself, I get to, I guess, kind of sit at the top or in the chair there as well. But I'm surrounded by a great team. I look around the kind of table that I have, and um, my Tuesday morning calls with my operation team, our least tendered teammate is 3 years. I have
Wow.
people that have been along for this journey for 6 years and grown, learned, failed, won everything from above. So I think it's been awesome to kind of grow the culture internally. I have an army of absolute fucking killers. My God,
Yeah.
that's reality. I can stand up and be like, get the kudos, and you guys can give us some props in the industry there as well. I get to wear the Plant Life hat and that, but it's not me. I'm a part of what we're doing here. It's the greater team that we have. We're surrounded by a ton of individuals passionate about cannabis, passionate about people, passionate about the industry there as well. And I think maybe being friendly. I look in high tides lift all ships. And as far as with the industry, to be courteous and be friendly with the industry there as well. And we don't play the price game, is the reality. There's the two other entities that you mentioned. They're Alberta businesses, is the
Yeah.
reality. So 20% of the market in this industry is high tide or value buds in that regard. So I don't want to say planted the flag, but for the last years, I'm like, we're going to win with people, not prices. And the reality is we can't compete with prices. We're 20% margins or less on that. I'm not talking to you on this call because Plant Life probably doesn't exist or somebody else has acquired us with what's actually happening, right? So we've kind of
Right.
planted our flag as far as being people centric. And I don't know if that's with the other industry and the other retailers out there, we're playing on even ground with you. Like we're on scale, but
Yeah, yeah.
we're trying to fight the same battle with you, right? So with anybody, both the ones you mentioned, great retailers there as well, very different business than we do, but everybody's playing the cards they're dealt. Everybody's got a battle from their own seat there as well, and yeah, it's been good. I appreciate obviously the industry and that kind of things, but I think being a decent individual and surrounding yourself with decent individuals there as well, portrays well in the industry, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're certainly cut from a different cloth. We can tell right from the first call that we had. We're like, yeah, I like him. He's different. But you get it. I think that's what you really understand is how important, like, your people make your company, right? At the end of the day, and they're going to, if you take care of your people, they will take care of your customers 100%. Come back to just for the audience that doesn't understand, what is it? You don't play the pricing game. What does that mean?
Just us. You look in the market and you have people taking low margins on it. There's the discounters out there. There's people taking 20% margins on products, and we're all buying it from the same place. We
Right.
are all through HLC. We don't have flow through. We're not in other provinces. We're all buying products of the same thing. So we play when Value Buds and when some of the other retailers first came online. There was a big uproar, and we're going to go to HLC and have them march on AGLC and have raised the prices and everything else that's happening, and all great and grand. And I sat back and just talked to some people. I'm like, can appreciate what you're doing right now, but make sure you step back, make sure the lion's share of your time is focusing on your business, and that your business is as healthy as it can be and as
Mm.
profitable as it can be, because we're in a storm right now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
everybody batten down the hatches, be as profitable, worry about your store right now, and make sure you can come through on the other side. So we're not dropping our prices out there. We like to have conversations. We like to, I want to say, grow the cannabis industry, but we're not necessarily picking products off the wall, high THC, low price. That's not why people are coming in to see us, to make a determining factor when they're purchasing a product. So that's where I say we're not playing the pricing game. I guess
Got it.
we're
Yep.
not direct competing price wise on that regards. You'll come in and yes, you will pay more for a product that you can find somewhere else at some other retailers, right?
But you're not going to get plant life experience.
You're not going to get that experience. Yeah, you're not going to get somebody that consumes cannabis and enjoys what they're doing and wants
Yeah.
to grow the industry, right? So, yeah.
Wild. What do you feel? So I don't think, I can't remember if we covered this. You have no plans to expand beyond Alberta.
Those conversations are always happening. We have,
It'll happen. It's going to
yeah,
happen. Mark my words. It's going to happen. Wes, it's going to happen.
we have bars all the way from Victoria all the way out to Oshawa. So we have boots on the ground in provinces all the way along. We obviously have relationships in centers and with landlords and stuff. So those conversations happen right now. You look and I always look to go to Ontario or some other province there as well. I don't want to say we don't have any brand equity, but there's a lot of catch up to do.
Right.
Is the
Right.
reality.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
open in a store and you open one store. I look, and if you're moving to a province, you got to kind of have the game plan and make a real blitz of it, because you're going to cut your team in half. You're going to want to send out the best of that location
Mhm.
and best of that region. When does that really start making money? When is the uptick on that? And you're really playing from behind, right? So never say never. Those conversations are out there, but I'm right now. I know the devil I know, which is Alberta.
Yeah.
So I know this province
Well,
very well, and
there's something to be said with that, right? Because, Alberta has gone through its reform and, distribution. How do we handle things? Whittling back on SKUs, which I want to ask you about that as well. But that consideration, I'm going to move into Ontario. Now you're dealing with a completely different beast, right? You're dealing with OCS, right? And the AGCO. You've been saying AGLC so much. I'm going to all these acronyms, man. Anyways, so in Ontario, you've got your general listings, you've got your flow through. Alberta, it doesn't operate like that, right? It's direct.
it's direct AGLC. So you get the order sheet every Thursday afternoon. All the orders have to be submitted. You can submit them anytime over the weekend. You get your allocations on Monday. So every retailer gets your order form Thursday. What you get on the order comes on Monday there.
I don't want to say this, and you probably can't even speak to it, but is there any favoritism based on the scale of the operator? So, I need to have, I remember when next Friday, so I love Gavin, we were talking about the chameleon pack, and I'm like, when the fuck are you dropping it in Ontario? Like, what the hell is going on? And it never became available, never became. And then, but talking to him, he's like, dude, distribution is a nightmare. But I'm just thinking, Plant Life puts their hands up and go, we want the chameleon pack, right? Does the AGLC go, yeah, we're going to give this Plant Life? And then, the allocations for the other guys, fuck you. We're just, I don't know.
Knowledge, no. Everything they have, formulas and how they distribute for sure. I know there's certain things with new launches and stuff coming to the province, or say if it was a Canadian connoisseur pack, I can express interest to AGLC as far as loading more products in. Where if they had 50 cases, I can express that we're looking to bring it over 40 locations or whatever it might be, in the hopes that maybe AGLC will increase. And obviously they've been open to that. But as far as a direct to retailer would be great. But nothing that
Yeah, yeah.
nothing that I've seen. I can't speak to some larger ones out there. Don't know, but no, I don't believe so.
Okay. Within Alberta, so Ontario, the reason I'm going to ask this question is Ontario went through uh, the challenge of, if I own multiple locations, or not even that, I'm shuttering the doors, going through. It was very difficult to move that product to another location. They've just recently gone through. I don't know what all the exact letter of the law is and how they've changed it, but they've expedited that process, right? So I either own 5, 6, 10 locations. This isn't selling well here. I can move it to another. How does that work in Alberta? And how do you look at product performing well or not well, and we need to be able to move it?
Yeah, so as of I guess it would have been a couple years ago that they opened up transferring or selling from one retailer to the other. So we can sell internally in our channels, and again, expedite products out there. And you could also sell retailer to retailer if you're so inclined, or somebody was doing something up north and you needed products up north, you can sell retailer to retailer there as well. So when the order sheet comes out on Thursday, I have some intelligent people that are the old spreadsheet Excel wizards in the background that check the old run through rate as far as products and items go. So we're able to, some of our quieter shops, move some products to some of our busier shops in there as well. If we're doing events and things as well, we can obviously shuttle some products over there. So again, in this industry, when you're chasing pennies to try and make a dollar, sometime those little moves add up there. So yeah, definitely an opportunity. We've discussed being like, do we bring in an AGLC orders a couple $100 an order for actual delivery? Never mind if you have 10 boxes or if you have 100 boxes.
Sure.
It's just a flat rate on there. So some of our locations that are close together, we're like, all right, do we just order to one location and then divide it up there? Like, is there an opportunity cost to save
Yeah.
whatever, $1,000 bucks, or a couple $1,000 over a month as well, right? So always kind of exploring the little things where you might be able to
But that's
keep some
smart
money,
operations, man.
keep some money in the jeans there a
Yeah,
little bit, and
no
be
doubt.
is the opportunity cost there? If it's there, maybe explore it. If it's not,
How do Wow, but that's smart. As an operator, that's just smart, right? You want to look for the efficiencies and the ability to save money, which again, you're chasing pennies. Um, what are you using for data? Are you using your own data to understand how well products are performing? And it's funny because I joke with my wife with this, in the health food and care industry. There's POS systems, and some of them are still just using such antiquated systems. They're not using inventory control. They don't look at it. They're not even knowing when expiries are happening on their products and this. And I'm like, you guys think you got it? Like, you should see what goes on
Cannabis.
in the cannabis industry. But I'm just curious what type of data points you use to understand. Your obvious is there, right? You've got your top 10s, top 20s, whatever they move in these locations, or these locations that are regional, whatever. But what are you using to help you understand outside of just your POS data?
Yeah, we track landed on date, so we'll see when orders actually arrive in shop. So we have, as far as run through rate from a landed on date. The wrinkle that's thrown in there was some packaging dates where you order products,
Oh
and you're like,
yeah.
oh, that's 9 months ago already, or whatever it might be. So very much a lot better than what we've seen in the past. So, but you'll see those kind of things sneak in. But I think it's one of the largest challenges, to be very honest, in the industry. And I think we do it well. I don't think we do it 100% by any means. I know we look, and if a product, I don't want to be selling a product that's 6 months, 9 months old in that regards. I'd love to, within the month, 2 months, 3 months, when we have 40 locations and doing it
Mm.
at scale, it becomes a challenge on that one, right? So to look, and how do you kind of taper things down before you just absolutely take a bloodbath and give them away? How do you start
Yeah, yeah.
price
Jeez.
motivating them a little bit as the kind of the legs get a little longer on there, is something that we try and do before more or less just giving it away
Yeah, yeah.
at a certain point.
Wes, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. Speaking of challenges across 40 locations with, that many bud tenders and stuff like that, I'm curious how you go about, keeping your bud tenders trained and up to date and on the latest, right? Like, do you have programs that are, teaching them how to upsell certain products or keeping them up to date on what new SKUs are available? What does that look like for you across so many locations?
Yeah, it's a multi-prong approach, I guess, from there. One of our core values is a passion for higher learning. So every Tuesday, we have a PK session. So we'll have trying somebody from the industry pop in and spend half an hour talking to our team. We'll have anywhere from 40 to 45 people come in there. So about 25 roughly percent of our team in there. I'm hopping in there, and then we record that and have that kind of live live in Google. So in our drive in there, we do use the Spiffy platform. We have a lot of people. We don't not be, or I should say, we don't draw the line in the sand and be like, you're learning these modules over these days. I much rather prefer we have people that are incredibly passionate. When I look through and I'm like, you've done 700 modules on this thing. And guess what? We also have people that have done 7 modules there as well. So it gives us the opportunity to make sure we're investing with the people that we know are passionate and that are behind what we're doing, and also the ability for us to spend some time with the people that maybe not haven't bought into what we're doing, but maybe just start collecting a paycheck, or
you get a
really
promo and you get a pip.
Really like the discount, really like the discount, and showing up and walking out the door there as well. So our time to kind of invest with them and kind of touch base from there. We have again going back. I have a gentleman, Dylan, who does procurement with me, who actually wrote a book. So the Bud Tenders Guide to the Galaxy, 420 reviews of cannabis, 1 gram at a time through a volcano.
What?
So he does.
Jesus.
So he does
Wow.
procurement with. So he's one of the gentlemen that does procurement with us. So as far as the passionate individual, was a power engineer. So incredibly brilliant, smart individual, and incredibly passionate about cannabis. And obviously, to have a resource like that for the team and to be able to talk and discuss as well is great. We have internal chats, not necessarily Slack groups, but WhatsApp groups to kind of keep everybody together there as well. And I think with anything, no matter what you're doing, playing a team sport or playing whatever it is, everybody wants to be a part of something, right? So again, how do you make people feel heard, included, appreciated, and a part of really something of what we're trying to make happen.
When do we get our hands on that book? I want to take a look.
Yeah, we'll get one shipped out for it. You'll be impressed that I give them
420 through a volcano. Man, 1 gram at a time.
1 gram at a time, and has everything.
Jeez.
Some ancient stuff where you got Hexu Bayou on there. Like, you'll open up stuff and just read it and be like, I forgot this shit existed. And incredible.
No
Yeah. When it was packaged on First Thoughts, like it's an incredible
okay,
thing.
So you just mentioned it again. I want to circle back to this. And it's something I haven't dug into enough in Ontario or across the different provinces. Packaged on. Yeah, okay. I get it. The reason I'm like that is because with that, Wes and I, in our early days at Ample, we had clients that would receive product back and they would just repackage it. And we knew in 2017 what was going on, right? It was, why do they want to change this? The lot number's the same, but what are they doing? Why are they doing? And then I'm like, oh, I know what they're doing. So regardless of the issue of repackaging, do you have available to you packaged on information when it comes to the SKUs of the products? No. Does Alberta have a criteria of they'll only keep it in for so long before they'll send it out? Or do they say anything past 9 months? No, we're not shipping that out. Anything past a year, we're not shipping it. Like, what's going on?
I'm not too sure. I'd be giving you false information if I told you something on that. I would say it's been better, and I think that's just the supply chain as a whole,
right,
with the tremendous SKUs and products in there. So I know what's coming to market. We're seeing products in a couple of weeks, which is amazing in that essence. But again, if you see a product that hasn't been selling well, 2 or 3 months, I believe it's 60 days, and I believe an LP has an RTV if it hasn't sold. Again, don't quote me on that. Maybe 60, 90 when the performance isn't there, where the burden now shifts back to the licensed producer to get that out of the province. But yeah, they try and keep the tail tight there as well. And with anything, like, guess what? AGLC, OCS, everybody doing everything that we'd like to see them? Absolutely fucking not. Like, let's put that out there. But as a whole, everybody's trying to do their best. Everybody's trying to improve what they're doing.
Yeah.
I got to give them a ton of credit. Is it where I'd like to see it? No. But we're
Yeah.
we're in
Well,
we're in
we
infancy state. We're
that's
in
what we
infancy
do.
stages here. Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course,
Critique. Yeah.
especially in an immature market, like, we want to be, even from where we sit, you could do better. You need to reform this. You need to cut taxes. I get it. Yeah, we're assholes, armchair quarterbacks. I get it. But at the same time, and the reason I ask is Wes picked me up. I'm big into the one-to-ones, right? As I'm maturing, the 30+%, they just, no thanks. I don't like to green out anymore. I like clear state of consciousness, just a good high. And Wes picked me up a product. I won't mention the brand or the retailer because I don't want to get them in trouble. But I'd forgotten that he got these for me, and I pulled them out of my jacket. And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about these. And then I'm just looking at the package, which is way over packaged, and I'm like, oh god, packaging is an issue. I'm not even kidding. It was over a year old, and he had just bought them, and I'm like, immediately, just my psyche, I'm going, this is not going to be a good product. There's just no way this is going to be a good product, right? Exactly. And that's why I'm asking about that, because even with the work that we do, outside of the podcast, I don't see that as a requirement. I mean, if you're putting a listing to OCS, there is no packaged on, there is no harvested on, there is no, made into distillate on, I don't know, extracted on. And I'm wondering, should that be a requirement? I mean, we don't see it, I don't think, in alcohol. You have more experience on that side. Like, should it be something that's getting reported, or is that just going to all of a sudden crush the market even more?
I think it definitely throws another wrench in the market there as well, right? And again, you look at the average consumer coming in. Are they looking?
Mm.
That's a real question, right? Like being on the inside and being in the industry, you're critical of it, and you're looking at the packaged on dates. I see one, and there'll be certain ones that'll be harvested in June, packaged in October, and it's in your door in January. And I'm like, maybe you just should have kept the package on date and and wiped your hands with the harvested on date on that for just perception of it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, as a consumer, I think it would be great, and for consumers coming in there, I think it would be great. I think that would be a tough one for the market and the OCS, just as far as the handling of it, or AGLC. A nightmare, I think, would probably be the
Yeah,
easiest
yeah. Well, I
easiest
see that. Yeah.
start to say that.
But I wonder, future state, couple years, few years, decade, maybe even, as the consumer becomes more educated about the products they're consuming. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too over hopeful when it comes to it, thinking, because I mean, look at the shit that we still buy and eat, right? Like processed and, guilty. But we just don't even. My wife, I'll give you an example, sends me out for diced tomatoes. I bring it home. She's like, "There's sugar in this." I'm like, "They're diced tomatoes." She goes, "They added sugar." I go, "What do you mean they added sugar?" And I look at it. And I read through the ingredients, like, what the fuck? Like, this is diced tomatoes. Like, why why is there sugar in this, right? So, and then I'm like, if there's no hope for an industry that's existed forever and I'm not paying attention, should I even bother or worry about the future state of an industry that may never get there anyways?
You wonder and you look right now, and no different. I think there's more people reading labeled no matter what they're putting in their body than has ever happened before,
Mhm.
right? So, you got to consider and being we're behind as far as the uptick on that, but will that be something as the market matures, as consumer matures? Absolutely, it's probably something that's going to be looked at. We have people that walk into our stores and they're like, "What's the freshest product on the shelf?" It's like,
Let's go
this
look.
what
We'll look at every single
legitimately,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the team's aware of it though, right? Because they get excited for that shit as well. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you can ship bananas from California to Edmonton and they arrive in 2 days. How can we not get product into a store in 2 weeks
Yeah,
or whatever, right?
yeah,
Like
that's a
let's
great
let's
point, man.
let's figure it out. I can get these bananas in a day. How do we
Yeah.
get cannabis there? And obviously some more red tape, but
Yeah, we've
it'll
we've
come.
we've touched on the retention. Obviously, your culture is very much important for the retention of your employees. How do you attract them, right? Because obviously, you know, outfitting 39, going back into 40 stores, you have to be able to draw them. Obviously, the tenure is decent. We understand that, but how do you attract them? Like you're not doing job fairs, or maybe you are. I don't know.
No, I think you reeled it back and talking about kind of our where we stand in the industry. We're well regarded. We have a lot of people that look at us in the kind light, which is great to see. So I think that we have some people from the outside with an interest to obviously join the team. And one thing maybe in comparison to some other small retailers is there is the opportunity to grow. I
Mm,
look around right now, and there's still positions and things in this in our entity that we don't have. I look previously and before, we didn't have somebody doing procurement, and I didn't have somebody in a regional role over these stores. So there's always been kind of a growth, and that's been one of the most amazing things, I guess, in my role, to have some people that have really stepped up and to see some growth in that. But
Mm.
also one of the biggest challenges over the growth there as well, where we still run a pretty lean team. As far as some of the other ones out there, it's not 6 lawyers on our payroll and 6 people in marketing and 20 people doing procurement and stuffs, but there is still the growth and still the opportunity with a lot of people that would like to join, right? And again, for just the average bud tender or a frontline employee coming in the doors there as well, we like to again offer a little bit more and of an experience there as well. And like you said, where I was stressed on, if we can figure out the employee journey,
Hmm.
the guest journey becomes very easy on that. And I think we do it well. I think there's always the gaps and some things that fall between the cracks on it, but it's one thing that we spend a lot of time and energy on.
Very cool. Very cool. Help demystify. There's all this talk around data deals, data deals, data deals, good, bad, the ugly. It seems that we were talking to David about this when he was on earlier. The industry, at least when we started to understand data deals, there's a lot of vocal individuals for good reason, some of them, right? Are totally against it, shouldn't exist. And we're like, it exists in other industries, it's not new. Now, not all are created equal. Help us understand from your perspective, Plantlife's perspective, why it should exist, shouldn't exist, how you deal with it, and what a properly functioning system looks like.
It's a tough one to navigate. I'll say that right now. You look in the industry, and it's a part of the industry. It's a part of the
Mhm.
fabric, right? You can look at publicly traded companies and understand where some of those dollars are coming from. You see some collectives of some independent retailers there as well, and great, but that's propping up the same agenda as a data deal. You can talk about it being whatever it is, but that's the reality of real buying power and people wanting to do business with you as well, right? So
Mhm.
again, you look in the province of Alberta and us to be able to turn around data from 40 points in the province or vice versa. There's some need for that. There's no direct where a retailer is, or from AGLC right now to the frontline retailer. There's no clear line of sight for an actual LP besides some online channels or skipping people's actual menus there as well. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting one. It's tough. I don't know um, the proper things to say, I guess, on that one. It's a tough one
Well, you
to
brought
kind
up
of
a good
navigate,
point.
buddy.
I'll,
So
I'll, I'll say
like,
this. You brought up a good
yep,
point is that, with 39, I'm just going to call it 40 locations. You're ready to go 40
yeah.
locations and then 50. And we're going to see 10 in Ontario and then 10 in BC. But anyways, you can talk real data. You can talk real data points, right? So even if you are utilizing these programs, you're providing real data where I know independent one-offs that have data deals, right? Whatever they're calling them. I don't care what they're calling them. So you're giving me one point of distribution, right? How am I, let's just call that what that is a pay to play to be on my shelf. And we've demystified it a little bit, which is retailers take a big risk, especially when a new product is coming to market. I don't know how well I'll use, just because it's, the Canazar and hash holes, and this is kind of the thing right now. Hash holes enters the market. Okay, well, it may have done well in legacy, but you want me to put a Canazar product on my shelf at $50+ that's a big risk for me, right? My average consumer is spending X, my cart size is X, $50 is going to be half of that. I don't know, right? So I'm taking a risk to bring you in. Now, in perpetuity, I don't know, maybe Wes brought up a good point about that, but there is risk on a retailer side of bringing anything in.
Hugely. We look around, and again, great relationships in the industry and great relationships with a lot of LPs. And we've always kind of taken the stance where unfortunately we can't be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Coming from hospitality, we're curating a menu. You go and you look and you have your wine menu or your booze menu or whatever you have for cocktails and stuff. It's not the same premise over here, but there's the correlations over there where we want the best products at the best price points. Again, if it's a $20 product, I want what we feel is the best product at that price point to get into a guest's hands and scale up from there as well, right? So, but you look and products coming in there, it could be a hash rosin card at $75, and I'm like, it could be the best hash rosin card on the market. Is the industry ready for
Yeah.
that? And like at scale from 40 stores, I'm like, can I sell that at 40 stores? And
Right.
unfortunately, the answer is not. Like, there's the roadblock of, can a team member have that conversation with a guest? Do they know that that guest is standing right in front of them to be able to get them into a hash rosin card in the first place? And are they confident enough to have that, to get that product in there, right? And that's a higher end product. You can take that in a higher end flower there as well. So at our size and kind of the scale, that's one thing that we, it's not struggle with. It's one thing that I think we do better than most at scale. But
Nice.
it's always one thing, again, that we challenge ourselves to: how do we move the market forward? How are we able to sell a
Yeah.
jelly donut hash roll? How are we able to sell a $70 live rosin or whatever it might be, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Man, you brought something up, and again, I think this is your transferable skills and understanding from the hospitality market. But my parents were restaurateurs, so I understood a little bit about that, right? And then fast forward, Gordon Ramsay enters market, and all these shows breaking out about how to curate menus and what should be on it. And from those days, I go into a restaurant that has a million items on their menu, and I'm like, these guys are fucked. Like, how are they going to make it? Like, the amount of preparatory work, what's in the freezer, how old is the stuff in the freezer? I'm now looking at that through the lens of the cannabis industry, going, wow, no wonder stuff sits around with the package on date being a year. Wow, like, there's a
Yeah.
lot involved there.
You go back, and I think, again, it's one of the largest opportunities for everybody in the industry is to make sure that their inventory is tight. It's one of the biggest spends. It's arguably the biggest spend you make every week if you're ordering every week or whatever it
Yeah.
might be in there. And how do you make sure that you can profit on that? How do you make sure you can turn that? And it's tough. I'll go in and I'll look at menus, or I'll go in another province and shop a product, or even in this province, and be like, LBS, whatever it is, Sunset. I'm like, that's old. That's an old product out here, guys. That's vintage at this point. But you do see it, and again, it's I don't want to say the business acumen or some other ones out there, but it's like not directly liquor, as far as it goes, the correlations on that. But you have a lot of liquor retailers that are running cannabis shops and vice versa on that, that are out there. And again, it's like, what's the thought process behind inventory on there? What's the thought
Mm,
process behind the products that are coming in there? Where are you making those decisions from, right? And I think everybody has a little different nuances on how those decisions are made.
yeah, yeah. How many SKUs on average are the average plant lives carrying?
Um, we're anywhere from about 250 to 350. So some of our acquire shops are around 250. Some of our heavier shops are around 350 there as well. So we have some delivery locations where they're juiced up. So when you go to the website, I want absolutely everything that I think is an ideal product in this province there. When you're shopping there, I want to make sure that you can get it from our shops there. And then some of our quieter shops, I want to make sure that we're able to cut the tail, and they're a little one that are just trying to get by, right?
Hmm. And
Yeah.
so you already mentioned the website. I wanted to talk to you about that because the overhaul is incredible. Obviously, bread stack involved, but how important is it for a retailer to ensure that their website is, well, it's just cooking with today's grease? Like, there's because moms still exist, right? I mean, hell, the other day it was Instagram. Wes has shown me stuff before, but I had an Instagram ad to buy Coke. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? But so considering mom still exists, considering the cutthroat environment, how important is that? And was that one of the crucial factors in deciding to up the game there?
Yeah, absolutely. You look around, and I think, for everything that we do well, I don't think one thing, or I think an opportunity as far as we go, is our online presence, is our marketing, is our branding out there. I think we've ran a great ground game in this province, and we do really well on that one. But I think to how we're perceived from the outside, and maybe people that aren't in the industry, is one that we really have to elevate up there. Rewinding times, I guess 2-3 years ago, delivery went live in Alberta. So delivery went live, and we already took a swing at it. When
Mm.
delivery went live, we're like, we're gonna be the first out of the fucking gates. I'm gonna have our team here for the sheer size. We're more agile. I'll drive the car and deliver products out of the gates to make it happen. Like, we're ready to rock and roll. We're ready to go on this. And we went live, and it was like, all right. So we have some orders coming out of there. And again, to try and wrap it out, we're housing it internally there as well. So driving our own products to houses and stuff. And now we did it for about 2 months, and I'm like, "We're trying to squeeze water out of a fucking rock right now." Like, this is not like, "Okay, we've learned, we're quick, we're executing as far as we can." Like, no, let's fail fast on this. We're not fail fast, but, like, let's pull the plug on this when we're ready to go.
Yeah.
we'll be ready to go on this, right? And knowing what I know now, looking back at where we were, I'm like, we have a great brand. People enjoy plant life. People come in and see us in Alberta. But when you're sitting at home, you're not Googling plant life cannabis
Right.
delivery.
Right.
You're Googling weed
Weed to
delivery,
my door.
cannabis,
Yeah.
weed delivery Edmonton, weed delivery Calgary. So guess what? If you don't fucking show up, not sign her
Yeah.
down, but you may as well pull the plug on that, right? And it's no different. Like, man, if I'm selling socks out of a warehouse, guess what? If you put in socks and I'm at the top of socks, I'm probably running an all right business to
Yeah.
sell
Yeah.
socks across the world or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And the same premise kind of happens in cannabis there as well. So the marketing channels, the SEO, it feels like I've talked to everybody about SEO in this world as far as search engine optimization there and
Yep.
things. And I know the importance behind them. It's tough to quantify it. I think that's the biggest one for
Yeah.
anybody out there working in the SEO world. It's expensive. Marketing is obviously an expensive investment on that. But to drive up SEO, it's hard to be like, okay, does this investment equate to that? What does
Right.
actually being number one on weed delivery Edmonton mean? Right.
Mhm.
So I think that's one of the biggest ones that there's kind of not a gap in there, but yeah, crucial to have the online.
Also,
Crucial
never
to have the
ending.
online presence. Never ending. That's
And
the other
never
one.
ending,
Like,
because one week you can be on top and Google decides
Yeah,
to
it's
change
just
that algorithm
fighting,
and you're fucked.
fighting,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Constant fighting.
we were going through and we were chatting and talking about just like kind of the SEO things, and we're like, we need to put cheap weed on the website, and we're like, nothing about us says cheap weed, but but when people are Googling on the old Google machine, guess what? If you're popping up for cheap weed and they're on your website, that's
Yeah.
something, right?
Get
So the
them
little
there.
kind of nuances and stuff are pretty funny, but the World Wide Web and the old Google machine is something that I think everybody could spend some time in, and obviously having the resources or having some people that are experts in that area always helps.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Nor am I, but Wes is. Wes gets it. He knows how to do it.
Yeah,
Well, listen, man, it's
magic.
been so nice having you and conversing with you. I mean, we could talk forever. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in Ontario. I really am.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I know it's going to
We'll
happen.
make sure we reach out when we are.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you, buddy, and much continued success for Plant Life, yourself, and everyone that's involved. We know that you guys are crushing it. Is the flagship store the busiest?
No.
It's not.
No.
Maybe we need more
Yeah.
games, more concerts, more
We need
stuff
more
happening.
games, more Stanley Cups down there for sure.
More
So
Stanley Cups.
if you guys ever venture west, let's go to a hockey game. We'll get you a real hat.
Let's do
Cool.
it. All right,
Yeah.
buddy. All right. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining Legacies.
Beautiful. Thank you, gentlemen. A privilege to be here.
That was fun.
It's a lot of stores to manage, a lot of locations, but like, yeah, it's interesting the perception of it. Like you said, not being perceived the same way as some of the other big guys.
And I try to separate myself from it. Honestly, I do. Looking at it, because there's quite a few different chains. I haven't been in a Value Buds. You've been in the Value Buds, but I've been to a Canna Cabana, and they're just different. They're not the staff. From my own experience, I'm not saying all are created equal. From my own experience, the staff are just not as engaging, and I don't know why. But I think it just comes down to our conversations, which we have a lot of, and I don't know why the High Tide Value Buds. I don't know why Canna Cabana, they get this bad rep from the industry. I guess I don't know. Versus a Plant Life where they're almost adored, right? And again, is it because like Ian's fucking awesome. Like he's full of energy. He knows his shit. He genuinely cares about the industry, his people that work with him and for him. And then you've got the One Plants on the other side as well. And they seem to do really well and everyone likes them. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think there's two. There's the public perception and there's the industry perception. And I think it comes down to Ian as well mentioning those relationships he has with those calls he has with brands. And maybe that's where the positive industry perception comes from, is that everyone who's interacted with someone on an industry level from Plant Life has had completely different experiences than they've had with dealing with someone like a High Tide, right?
Right.
Again, we haven't been into a Plant Life, so we can't speak from the consumer perspective of being in those stores. But I think a lot of what we hear is industry perception rather than consumer perception.
I think that's what it is. And if you look at, like, let's look at a parallel industry for a second. What's your, I don't know, do you like the keg Outback. I don't know any of those. Like,
as far as even though they're a chain, the keg.
well, that's what I was gonna say.
You can't beat the fucking value of the keg. It's
Okay,
delicious.
so there's
it's
my
good.
point.
Love
That's my point, right? So as a consumer, now you don't know, we're not in that industry. Now, if we were in that industry, we may know some other, facts, some behind the scenes, like what's going on, right? How are they, what's that saying? I don't know. I'm fucking losing my mind. There's a saying about,
I know what
you
you're
don't want to know how something is made.
How the chickens are, I don't know. I know exactly
You know what
you're
I'm trying to
talking
say, right?
about. I love chicken nuggets, but I want to know the chicken nuggets.
But the juice, but whatever I'm trying to say, sorry, is we're not in the industry. We don't know all the dirt. We don't know all the operators. We don't know the people at the tops of the companies. And in this case, you look at, now Walmart for me is a little different, but you look at a keg, for instance, and you go, great value, great food, great. Awesome. It's multiple chains across, I don't know if just Canada or North America, but regardless. Whereas,
I could go to a Jacob's Steakhouse in Toronto and pay $300-$400 for a steak dinner.
Right.
It's going to be delicious, but it's a one-time.
But you're not going to eat there every week.
Right.
Yeah. So I get that. But again, we're in the industry. It's probably industry perception. I don't know necessarily it's consumers that have issues with the value buds and the Canna Cabanas and whatnot. I do know that the indies go out of their way, right, to try and do what they can. But I've also been in some indies that I'm like, you shouldn't exist. You shouldn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to broad brush any of them.
I think one of the big concerns industry side is for these huge retailers who seem to mostly stock these huge brands and really don't touch much of the craft stuff. And it's are the first time consumers, these Canna Curious people going in here, potentially always going to have a certain type of experience and never get to experience some of these craft products, right? And not be open to all these. And again, that's what we're trying to do, I guess, with our content. But I think that's a big concern.
Well,
right?
imagine where we would be in the alcohol industry. So I don't consume hardly any alcohol anymore, but talk to me 4 years ago, I was always on the search or the hunt for the best craft beer. But a lot of that comes around with availability and marketing and knowing that's what I'm looking for. The consumers may not have that information available to them without that direct one-to-one connection with the bud tender. But then again, if I don't know I'm looking for craft and I don't know it necessarily exists, because the average consumer, again, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know how much money is going to taxes. They don't know what a micro grow versus a full scale LP is. They don't know any of that. We are so far away from our consumers knowing anything about the industry. And that's obviously one of the issues. So, but regardless, it's always great to have David on. He's so informed. He understands the industry. Been around it long enough, that's for sure. And then the energy at Ian, just awesome. But we're going to be doing something really cool. You came up with a cool concept. Why don't you inform everyone? Put the call out.
Yeah, I think, we definitely like to hear more from bud tenders, and we'd like to feature some bud tenders on the show. Not necessarily coming on as guests and spending a full hour with us, but it's a chance we'd love to see your guys' clips. We'd love to see you, submit a video to us and tell us a little bit about yourself, what store you work at, what products you're excited about, what excites you in the industry. And this could be just a 60, 90-second clip, and submit those in, and we'd love to feature on the episode. And really that's it. Just sharing what you love about the industry and a little bit about yourself and your store. Yeah.
I love it. I love that idea. It reminds me of late night. You know me with the late night TV. I haven't been into that in probably a decade now, but I used to love those little cutting clips, right? Let's see what's going on with so-and-so at this restaurant or whatever it might be. So if you have any clips that you want to send in, obviously we can only feature one each episode. We don't know what the response will be either. So if you submit something and we don't get to it, it's not that we didn't like it or anything. It's just, maybe we get to a couple. I don't know.
We'll get to a couple.
What it's like.
I think the other thing to mention too is, no products in the video, no kind of
no
THC logos,
logos,
all that stuff.
Which is going to be tough if you're at your retail location and you have product on display. So maybe use, what do they call that? Like portrait video recording.
Yeah,
or
portrait
something,
mode.
so
I can edit a couple things out if there's anything minor, but we just want to feature some bud tenders on here because we hear a lot from the kind of management to exec level up on this show, and obviously we got a lot of insight from that.
Frontline.
We want to hear some frontline stuff. We want to share some of those stories.
And
so
bonus points if you can throw in craziest customer stories.
yeah,
That'd be even, well, I like that. Anyways, been another show. I'm through it. I've got lots of tea in me now. Lots of tea. It's been a great episode though, but we appreciate you. We'll see you next week on Legacies.